Good morning. Welcome to the State Board of Education meeting. This is a call to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda item 1.3, information regarding the Open Meeting Act is posted as you enter the room from the main entrance doors. Can I do this and then I'll finish it? Okay, all right. The Open Meetings Act is also posted on the State Board of Education website. Will you please call the roll?
Patsy Kojons.
Here.
Lisa Fricke.
Here.
Patty Goobles. Jacqueline Morrison. Kirk Penner.
Here.
Maureen Nichols.
Here.
Robin Stevens.
Here.
Deborah Neary.
Here.
Commissioner Bloomstead.
Here.
6 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. Agenda item 1.4, meeting protocol, Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks for everyone's attendance today, and appreciate you being here. Obviously, if you have conversations or something you need to take out, you can go ahead and do that out in the hallway. Appreciate your attention to other people's needs as we still are watching COVID protocols and things along those lines, but just thank you for your attendance and attention to the State Board of Education.
Commissioner, will you now do the protocol for the meeting?
I did that one.
Okay, then you can do the business for the meeting. Okay.
Actually, I think our item is item 2, where we have some special presentations.
You might just make an announcement that the board is able to see, but we're working on the audio visual for the audience to see.
Okay, very good. So I was just told that we can actually see your presentation, but right now they're working on trying to make sure the technology will be there to do that. So we'll slow play it and see what happens a little bit. It is our pleasure to have several special presentations together today, and to have several folks together with us. Board Member Neary, I wonder if you would be willing to do the introductions of our first presenters today.
So I'm delighted to, if you want to start coming forward, oops, sorry, let me turn that, oops, sorry about that. If our friends from Millard Public Schools could come forward. When they did the redistricting for the state board seats, Millard Public Schools was a school that wasn't in my district before and is new, and so over the last year it's been a real pleasure to get to know that school district and the wonderful people that make up that school district and some of the incredible programs that are happening. And so we're thrilled to have a big group today, including Millard Public Schools' new superintendent, Dr. Schwartz. Thank you all for being here. This presentation that you're going to hear about, well, I'm just going to let them tell you how amazing it is, but it's just one more story about the importance of partnerships and helping our kids reach their full potential, and very excited to celebrate this wonderful program. So thank you, and I'll let you guys take it away.
Sure. Good morning. Good morning, State Board of Education members. Good morning, Commissioner Bloomstead. On behalf of Millard Public Schools, thank you for the opportunity to share some information about our early college high school program. We are thrilled to be here, and we also have brought a number of folks to represent not only Millard Public Schools, but also Metropolitan Community College, who are our post-secondary partner. You can see everyone listed here. So thank you for the opportunity to share information about our early college program. I'm Melanie Olson. I'm coordinator of secondary programs. We have Andy Pinkle, who is assistant principal at Millard South. We have Amy Sweets, who is a vocal music instructor and also building coordinator for early college. And we have on the end of the table early college alumni and Millard Public Schools graduate Meg Williams, who will be sharing the student perspective.
Okay, good morning. We're really excited about the Early College High School program. The thing that the Early College High School program does for students at Millard South is it allows our students the opportunity to attend high school at Millard South while simultaneously working on their coursework to attain a liberal arts academic transfer associate's degree from Metropolitan Community College, while at the same time completing their degree requirements at Millard South High School for their high school diploma. The program at Millard South actually began in 2015-16. It's a big partnership, and that's another big celebration. It's many partners involved in it. The Millard Public Schools Foundation has been a big supporter, along with our key partner, Metropolitan Community College, and also partnership with the University of Nebraska at Omaha. The Millard Public Schools and Millard South, we work really hard to hire and recruit staff who either have their approved credentials through the Higher Learning Commission that will allow them to be adjunct professors with Metropolitan Community College. And then with the Millard Public Schools Foundation, when we recruit staff who do not quite yet have those credentials, they provide scholarships and incentives along with the Millard Public Schools that will allow them to go ahead and attain those credentials so that they can teach in the program. Metropolitan Community College works really hard with us to vet our staff, and they approve the credentials of our staff members, which allows them to teach on the campus for us. And they have worked with us to grant a reduced tuition rate to our students. And of course, a key player because they grant the degree to students at the culmination of their 4 years with us at Millard South. And the other thing that they've done that's really tremendous for us is they provide an on-site staff member who works full-time at Millard South, representing Metropolitan Community College, to work with Amy to resolve issues pertaining to the program and give us a liaison between Millard South and Metropolitan Community College to make sure that our students and our families have a good experience in the program. And then the University of Nebraska of Omaha has been integral to at the early onset of the program. They provided technology that allowed the students in the program to be the first in our building to be one-to-one, which many colleges are doing. So that allowed us to really get the program off and running well. And then they recognize for full transfer students who have earned the degree. About 35% of the students who graduate from the program do matriculate straight to UNO. So they're a tremendous partner for us.
Millard South currently has 630 students pursuing their Associate of Arts degree while at the same time attending Millard South and working towards their high school diploma and graduation. What's really unique about our program is that it takes place entirely on our Millard South campus. Our early college participants sit in classes on Millard South's campus and are taught by our instructors. We currently have 47 staff members who are also adjunct professors through Metropolitan Community College. So to participate in our program, students can apply as 8th graders. It's open to any 8th grader in the area. They either need to reside within Millard South's attendance area or will transfer to our school if accepted. And as you can imagine, it's a pretty competitive program to get into. Annually, we have over 200 students apply for the program. Right now, we are able to accept about 160 into each course, or into each class, excuse me. And as we're looking at student applications, they are writing us personal essays. We are looking at their current grades. We're looking at the courses they're taking, the course rigor. We're looking at their attendance, and they also submit a personal recommendation by a teacher. Something else that's very unique about our program is that students have the flexibility to take many, many different courses. We have 61 college-level courses offered at Millard South. And these are a combination of both required and elective courses. So students have the ability to take classes in areas they're interested in or would like to explore, whatever is best for them academically. I am very excited to talk about college tuition. This is a wonderful point. Thanks to Metropolitan Community College's excellent support of our students, they offer a discounted tuition rate of $50 per college course. And that's course, not credit hour. So as you can imagine, earning an associate's degree with $50 per course is just a huge financial savings for our students and their families. And of course, due to recent legislation, tuition is free through Metropolitan Community College for the next 3 years. So a huge majority of our students are going to be able to graduate with their Associate of Arts degree virtually debt-free, which we know is only going to set them up for success in their post-secondary and adult life. And then, of course, there is plenty of support for our students in the program. Both Millard and MCC have dedicated staff on site to help students and their families, as well as all of the excellent support from our staff members. All right, let's look at a little bit of data here. So the number of students that successfully complete the program and earn their associate's degree is very impressive. It's certainly a testament to the students and the teachers' hard work and dedication. In the 2021 and 2022 school year, we had 143 students graduate with their associate's degree the same week they graduated with their high school diploma. The class of 2022 started with 169 students, and so 84.6% of that class was able to finish up with their associates. And of course, in high school, we still deal with some attrition in the sense that students move out of district, they may move out of state. We have had a few students who have self-selected out of the program in their best academic interest, but we are incredibly proud of the 143 students who did persevere and finish with their associates. Of that number, 82 of them graduated with honors, so they earned a 3.5 or higher in their college coursework. And then another number I just find staggering is that program-wide, our students at Millard South earned over 23,000 college credits last year through Metropolitan Community College. As we look towards this year, 2022-2023, we are projecting 138 of our current 145 seniors to graduate with their associates come May. School-wide, we have, again, 630 students that are participating throughout our 4 grades. As you can see, since early college began, our numbers of graduates have increased, and at the end of this school year, our current seniors will push the total number of graduates to over 600 students earning their associate's degree in just 5 years, and we are immensely proud of them all. Of course, the benefits to being in this type of an early college program are numerous. In addition to the tremendous financial savings, students are able to transfer these credits to post-secondary institutions around the country. We know that students who are complete dual enrollment courses in high school are more likely to continue throughout college and persist through those post-secondary plans, and we are excited to help them with those goals and dreams. A number of our students have decided to complete bachelor's degrees in a shorter amount of time. Some of them choose to take lighter workloads while in college so they can really focus on their studies, have jobs to earn money, and again, contribute to being debt-free upon graduation. Some of those students have gone on to double major or work towards internships and advanced degrees. And of course, some are taking the opportunity to study abroad and broaden those global perspectives. We also have plenty of students who choose to enter the workforce earlier, and of course, when you shorten the length of college, we have highly qualified candidates for the career fields. We are now excited to have a student testimonial from class of 2021, early college high school graduate, and current University of Nebraska-Lincoln student, Meg Williams.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here. So I'm just here to talk a little bit about my experience. So the reason why I first applied for this program was because I am a future-oriented person, and I kind of didn't, not necessarily use it as a measuring stick, but I wanted to see where I was at in my future goals because I was always excited for college. And so because I am future-oriented, it meant that really drew me to Millard South and to apply for this program. And I worked really hard on all my essays, and I had my mom proofread them and all of that. And when I got in, it was a really big win. But so then throughout high school, I was involved in a lot, and I took a bunch of leadership positions, and then all of my involvements are on the screen there. And it was really nice to have all of this rigorous coursework kind of laid out for me so I could balance all of that. And I was just working really hard, and academically I was challenged, and it was really fun, and I made some really awesome friends, and I had really great relationships with my teachers because I had to go in after hours and just really put the nose to the grindstone and get my work done. And then after I graduated, some of the benefits of this program was that I was now able to have a much more balanced college career, even in the Business Honors Academy, and having 2 jobs. and having a major and a minor. And so just all of this rigorous coursework, I felt like I was ready to take on the challenge where other students might feel a lot more overwhelmed. And so I've just been able to experience being a college student like everyone else, even though I have so much more time and energy put into my academics and activities. So this has been like a really awesome opportunity, and I'm a proud graduate of this program.
Right, well, we do have a few minutes left for some questions, so we will open it up and spend a few minutes entertaining any of those.
Mo.
Enthusiasm. Oh my gosh, what a bright future you have and others like you. But I'd like to ask the question, I am most impressed with the number of students that have gone through. I'd like to know a little bit more about the history of how you even started down this road, why it was important to you. And my other main question is, are you tracking the data of these students as they leave for at least the next 4 to 5 years to see where they go?
Sure, I'll let Andy handle the history question, but as far as the data question, we have a close partnership with Metropolitan Community College, and we are working with them on continuing to track these students. We are excited. We're getting to almost our first group that will have been in college for four years to look at that 4-year, 6-year graduation rate. So yes, we are keeping close track of them, and the first thing that we tracked was how well the credits transferred. That was our first thing that we were interested in. They transferred very well, so these students seem to be set up for success, so we're interested now to see what their next steps are. So yes, we are keeping track of them. And Andy, you want to share the history a little bit?
Yeah, we looked at starting an early college program at Millard South, going back even when I first started at Millard South in 2009, 2010. It's a very difficult task because it's difficult for many schools to have enough staff in their building who have the credentials to meet the HLC, Higher Learning Commission's requirements to allow them to be adjunct professors. At Millard South, we were really fortunate. Our leadership team, we have historically liked hiring non-traditional teachers, people who are coming to become teachers out of the business field. And the side benefit is a lot of those people came to us with major degrees and master's degrees in significant areas like biology or mathematics. So when we started doing the research, what we found out was we were maybe disproportionately to a lot of places positioned to be able to offer a program, because even going back 7, 8 years ago, we already had 25, 26, 27 staff members who just came to us with those credentials. The challenge moving forward for probably most schools will be how to continue to find ways to have teachers pursue degrees that will allow them to teach in those fields.
I just have one quick follow-up. I just want you to know I'm very pleased to hear that these courses transferred, because I remember 8+ years ago when I was first running for the board, that was a question that was a major concern brought to me, was their students had taken these courses, and when they got to the university or wherever they were going, they did not transfer. And so that was always a concern, and I had brought it forward, and so this pleases me a lot. Your students are very fortunate.
Lisa.
Wow, very impressed. And I've known about this program, but to hear the details was amazing. And Meg, it's nice to see a fellow sister, Kayamega, here succeeding. And so good luck to you in your future. My question is, I was not aware that this program was available to 8th graders. I think that's awesome. And so can you explain, is there a qualifier or some kind of quality that you're looking for to allow 8th graders to come into the program?
You probably just need to clarify that a bit. They apply in the winter of their 8th grade year, but they do begin taking classes their freshman year of high school when they come to us. We get them going right away, and right away in the fall of their freshman year, they start out right away taking a introduction to college type of class, which many colleges do on their campuses. But most of our students start right in with college curriculum in the fall of their freshman year.
All right, because I thought amazing, starting them in 8th grade. What are you looking for? So thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Deborah, first, thanks all for being here. So inspired by this. The question for you, Meg, you'd mentioned that your focus now is supply chain management, which, when I was in college wasn't even an option, and now I hear of some exciting things in that field. Did this career, what you did in high school, help you kind of fine-tune what you wanted to do with your career, or did it play a role for you?
Yeah, so, sorry, I'm gonna scoot a little closer to the mic. So when I went through the early college program, I was allowed to take a bunch of equivalent elective courses. And so I could kind of see that I really liked the data side of a lot of courses that I took. And then when I came into college, one of the reasons I got into the Business Honors Academy is because I already had that associate's under my belt. It was a really big sticking point for me that allowed me to get into that opportunity. And because I had most of what are called ACE courses or electives at Lincoln covered, I could jump right into my attempting to figure out if I want to be an AXI major or a supply chain management major. So during my freshman year, I was able to explore more career-oriented things instead of just passions, which I think was really helpful because now as a sophomore, I'm taking my major-specific courses already, where I have a couple friends who are still working on those ACE courses. So it definitely helped further along my experience.
Well, when we began this tradition, which was just the beginning of this year, we wanted to highlight schools that were doing creative and innovative projects and also collaborating with others. And I would say that you are a magnificent example of what all of us are hoping continues throughout the state, to take advantage of all the opportunities that are available, that you might have to look around a little bit to find them and work pretty hard to get them going. But it sounds to me like, Meg, that your school system is all about students. And so we are thrilled to have you here and to hear your story. And it is truly a story of success for our students in Nebraska. So thank you so much for being here.
As we're in transition, I just get this chance to say something. Thank you so much for presenting today, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the program. So, our next on our agenda, we have two of our partners in education preparation and teacher certification, Sarah Skreda and Jenny Jansky. So Sarah from UNL and Jenny from UNK. So, and we had Tammy Williams over there from UNO. So we had a good day on that front. So good to see you.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to tell you on behalf of both of us how glad we are to be here today to report on the work that's been done since the Educator Shortage Summit that we held in October. And we also have the great opportunity to also thank you for the grant support that you're lending to us to do our next summit, 2.0, as we're calling it unofficially at this point. So, is this our clicker? All right, great. Awesome. Well, there you see the NACD executive team. That was the team that put together the summit. And very quickly, you'll see, first of all, I just want to show the representation from 5 different institutions, public, private, large, small. And who we are, NACD, the Nebraska Association of Colleges for Teacher Education. You'll see that all 16 institutions in Nebraska that have educator prep programs belong to NACD. There are, again, coverage of large, small institutions, public, private. Our small little mighty NACTI group does not have any paid staff, but we come together 3 times a year basically to talk about best practices, follow legislation, and rural issues. So at the summit that we held in October, it was in Kearney, and you'll see on this slide, I'm not going to read it to you, but you'll see that all sections of education, all facets were represented. And the best thing I like about this slide is the map in the bottom center that shows where attendees came from. Large and small districts and other entities across the state from all corners. So here's what the purpose of the summit and what we did at the summit. We knew that there were lots of shortage conversations going on. We wanted to get together and have everyone represented and actually take some action. And so we had data presented, as the graphic shows, we identified barriers, we came up solutions, and then we took action, which is what the new information to you today will be. So 4 groups were formed. There were 4 barriers identified. These are the 4 that kind of rose to the surface. Certification, praxis, usually that tended to be more praxis core, the basic skills competency. Then we had recruitment and retention of workforce, which is just huge, as you can imagine, and marketing and elevating the profession, also a huge topic. So what these 4 groups did, we had these task forces, and between November of last year and June, they were tasked to meet at least twice. Several committees met several more times and even divided into subgroups. They put in a lot of time, and they developed action plans and recommendations. And a final report was put together, which was just recently put together this summer. One thing that you'll notice from the previous slide, the salary was not mentioned as one of the barriers. And we just want to acknowledge that we're not ignoring that fact. It was actually a part of every single task force. Salary was involved in the discussion. So we all discussed that dilemma. It's part of what drives us when we think about these 4 barriers. We just wanted to acknowledge that we do, that it is a factor. So I'm going to talk about these 4 task forces briefly. Sarah and I will. The first one is certification. I was a member of this task force. There were 23 members from schools and universities. And just a summary of the recommendations, we streamlined the process for out-of-state educators to become certified. Some of that has been taken care of through legislation. One of the things that we found is looking at other states, Minnesota is one, for example, there's a tiered system for certification that seemed to appeal to the group. They kind of latched onto that, and I feel like that would be a good system, but also I have to acknowledge that we're kind of going to that mode anyway, with some of the work that's being done in Rule 21. So we can't ignore that. That might be a good model, but I think we're headed there. Basically, Nebraska is on the right track to get there. And then also the third point was more efficient path for certified Nebraska educators to add endorsements, which is another topic that was brought up at the last board meeting.
Green button, right?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Scretta. Thank you for having us both here. I was part of a task force on praxis, and to Jenny's earlier point, this task force was at the time really focused on the praxis core exam. The recommendations from this task force were to remove praxis core altogether, and then if that was not possible, including multiple methods of assessment to assess that basic skills competency, and also then to collect and analyze data. We all feel like there are some groups of students who have more difficulty with the praxis core, and so we felt like that was important. The interesting thing with this task force is it was in real time with LB 1218, and so in order for us to really make the impact we wanted to, there was a letter that we put together with this position that was emailed to all the legislators and the senators. So obviously we did make some baby steps with the praxis, and so we will continue to work on this piece. A third task force was marketing and elevating the profession. And I guess I would qualify At the time, marketing was really what we were talking about, but most likely the better word would be promoting and elevating the profession, because marketing can be a very narrow scope. The work of the committee you see there was beyond marketing. The campaigns are certainly important, but it has to go beyond just some type of marketing campaign. The mentoring programs were, those were topics that were also discussed across task forces. So mentoring programs get a lot of traction. Increasing collaboration time, continuing and enhancing the general media campaigns is certainly part of this. And for those of you that were at the summit, you should have received the full final report, so you can see these in great detail and the action plans. And if that report is in need of being resent, we can coordinate with Ryan and make sure that you receive that. The recruitment and retention workforce task force decided to subdivide, because recruitment and retention are each a very big area in and of themselves. And so the recommendation in terms of recruitment, just in summary, were to increase the pathways to teaching. How can we provide pathways to all kinds of people who want to be teachers to get there and be qualified? And I guess that's probably a sidebar. Through all of these discussions and all of these task forces, the common theme was we want to be flexible and innovative without compromising the quality of teachers that we put in our classrooms. That's really an important point. Retention is also something that they decided to form a separate subgroup about. Is equally as important as recruiting people to the profession. Because if you bring people in, but people continue to leave, then we're not making any gains. And so again, here comes that teacher induction and mentoring program, professional learning, and then the wellness and culture of that school. One of the things we are very proud of as NACD was that we served as the model for the American Association of School Personnel Administrators National Educator Shortage Summit, and we're able to facilitate that event. And there's a white paper that came out, which certainly, again, if you're interested in more detail, we can provide that to Ryan. But basically what came out of that is we do need to make a systemic shift in education from the traditional how do we increase base salaries, say, for example, to looking at it as a total compensation management type of systemic action. And that it's not just a singular population, it's the federal, the state level, the organizations, the schools, and the educator preparation. So it's all groups that are responsible. So next steps. So our next steps is, well, we're providing the shortage summary findings. You're almost the end of the tour that we've been on across the state, so with the findings, and so that's what we've been doing. We will continue as an educator preparation program organization to be active in legislative advocacy for teacher preparation and to assist our P-12 partners in ensuring that we still can have quality educators, because Nebraska does a great job in educating its kids. Again, later in your agenda, we hope that we'll be able to accommodate number 3 and put on our Educator Shortage Summit 2.0. The goal of the second summit would be for our P-12 partners, and whether that be in including our other supporting organizations, to come and share best practices, strategies that have worked, maybe things that haven't and what they've done, to look again at the state data, see if we've made any progress from the last summit, and then possibly identify new priorities. And I say possibly because there's a committee that's planning it. I'm not putting it on. So those are ideas I'm sure we'll talk about in the planning committee. And then part of the grant that was submitted was to also establish, in partnership with NDE, a statewide educator shortage steering committee composed of all those entities, just to provide that coordination across all of those parties. And so we've got just one more minute here, and then we can take some questions. We want to thank you as the Board of Education for the support of educator preparation, but primarily as part of NACD, the support that you've given our organization. We want to make sure that you understand we're not an offshoot of the Board of Education. We're an independent organization made up of all of our colleges. You'll hear from another acronym group that is very similar to this. So we just are very proud to be preparing Nebraska's teachers and teachers for other states, and really appreciate your support. So if you have any questions, we have some time to entertain those.
Maureen?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say thank you for the dedication and commitment that the two of you put forward. I was thrilled when I saw the white paper that was put out, and much praise to Sarah Scaretta and you, Jenny, for all the work that you've done to put us on the national spotlight. Thank you. Shows that we're doing good work in Nebraska.
Thank you. Can I quickly clarify that while we're up here, I appreciate the compliment, but we are representative of a much larger group. We certainly didn't do this by ourselves. So I appreciate the kind words, and we will pass those on, but I just want to make sure that everyone realizes that.
Deborah?
Yeah, first I want to thank you, not just for the presentation today, which, you know, I think this is the question that I get the most often, and so I took pictures of all your slides so that I could make my own notes and be able to share with people. I mean, I've known there's good work happening, but I also want to thank you just for the event where you brought everyone together last summer, because that was incredibly inspiring, and to know that it was every sector, you know, in the education world in Nebraska that was a part of the discussion, and how important that was. So now I'm going to ask the really annoying question, and I apologize, I'm just that person, okay? But you said, what are the next steps for the Praxis? I mean, what do you see as the next short-term and long-term goals? Thank you.
You know, it's hard for us to predict because it's out of our control, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can recommend all that we want, but I do know that the department is doing work on that front. Brad Dirksen is taking the lead on that, from my understanding. And I do know that I would expect, you know, without knowing, that we're going to see some major changes coming through. And it will have to be supported by the board, from what I understand. And so we appreciate the support that you all can give to making changes and getting that barrier, maybe not necessarily gone, but at least different ways to cross that barrier.
I wanted to comment about the event that you held, and if you look around the room, you see that most of us were there, and we were there to show our support, and because we struggle with the same questions about the praxis and some of the things that you're dealing with. And I'll tell you what was most amazing to me. First of all, being there with all those people, brain pool was amazing. But secondly, it was different. And when I say different, I'm a pretty old gal, so been around a long time. I go to a lot of these things, and you have a feeling that we'll talk about it today, we'll leave, and we'll all feel better because we talked about it. But with the summit that you guys and your cohorts, your collaborators instigated and made come to life, made it feel like this is different. We are going to do something. And what you're saying today gives me new hope that that's the truth. And I will continue to support your efforts. So know that. And I'm sure State Board and NDE will do the best they can to help you be successful. So thank you for being here. Really enjoyed your presentation. Hope to see more of you.
And again, I'm going to say thanks in the transition, and we look forward to continuing that work all together. So thank you to both. Next, I get the privilege of introducing Lee Perez, who's our teacher. I don't even know if I need to introduce you, Lee. You're world famous now. So, but it's really been a pleasure to be able to work with Lee and as the Teacher of the Year. And I think I shared with you at the time that Lee was named. I actually, I think it's the first time that I knew someone who ended up being Teacher of the Year before they were Teacher of the Year. So I knew you win, Lee. I knew you win. So thanks for being here.
was actually working on my application when I was part of that committee too. That's sometimes when I turned my camera off, I was working on my essays, so. All right, well, hello everybody. I'm Lee Perez. I am the 2022 Nebraska Teacher of the Year, at least for a few months. So this is my second quarterly report. Oops, anyway, oh, that's not it. There we go. Oop. Oh dear. What did I do? Oh, there we go. Okay, so to begin, I want to start off with something that happened in my personal life. I became a father on June 3rd, 2022. So this is my baby girl, Natalia Liliana Perez Cruz. And funny story, she was actually born on her due date. That was her actual due date, so we were very proud of that. I thought public speaking was exhausting, but changing diapers is even more exhausting. So we've figured out a way to, when you have a parent, you figure out a way to strategize things, kind of like in the classroom. So we've figured out a way to actually get her into routine. She's sleeping about 6 hours right now, and when you have a baby, 6 hours is the new 9 hours. So yes, I just thought I would share a little tidbit from my personal life with y'all. This is Washington Week, and this occurred April 25th through the 29th, and it was probably the most incredible experience I've ever had in my life. Walking in the White House was just, it's something that I can't even explain in words. It was so incredible. And just to be in a room with some of the best educators in the country was just absolutely surreal. And to meet Dr. Biden, who's actually an educator herself, was a very, very cool experience. So I have a plethora of more pictures, but for time's sake, I could only include 2. So these were my top 2. So Washington Week was absolutely amazing, and I want to thank the department for sending me there because that was just the coolest thing ever. It really was. This is our National Teacher of the Year, Kurt Russell, and he is incredible. Not only is he probably one of the best speakers I've ever heard in my life, but he's probably one of the most humble human beings I've had the privilege of knowing. So someone snapped a picture of me and him to the left hugging. I'm just kind of wishing him good luck as he goes on his National Teacher of the Year tour. And I don't know if you've seen his work. He's been incredibly busy. I would highly recommend booking him for any type of keynote or PD or just any type of inspirational, motivational speech whatsoever, because he is one of the best speakers I've ever heard. So Mr. Russell is our National Teacher of the Year from Ohio, and he is absolutely incredible. And what I like about him is he's really trying to bring to the forefront a lot of how we diversify our curriculum, how we represent all students in public schools, and how we do that through the teaching workforce, and really kind of humanizing the curriculum for all students. Space Camp was the next event, and that happened July 20th through the 25th. So here's some shots from that. I am not a science person. I got a C in biology, and I'm kind of lucky I even got that. But I will say I learned a lot about STEM. I learned a lot about space. I learned a lot about team building. I learned a lot about rockets and propulsions and just a lot of science stuff that I can't even believe I just said right now. But I learned a lot of science vocabulary. But what the best part was just kind of breaking off into teams with other state teachers of the year and working together towards a common goal. It really, I mean, the one unifying thing I took away from it was teamwork. And that's something I really bring back into my classroom is even if you don't know how to do something, you absolutely can learn how to do something. So I learned how to pilot a rocket. I learned how to do the mechanics of a space station and things like that. And I never in my entire 40-year life thought I could ever do that. So it's kind of empowering and inspirational to take that back to my students and say, I did something I didn't think I could do, and you definitely can do things that you don't think you can do too. So here are my upcoming speaking events. I'm still keeping quite busy. So I am actually a keynote speaker at the Mid-TESOL Conference in Kansas City, Missouri on September 23rd and 24th. This is like a huge language conference that they have in the Midwest. So I was asked to keynote that, and I was very privileged. Dr. Anderson from Concordia and Dr. Vikas from Wayne State, who are basically the TESOL ESL professors and heads at their respective universities, asked me to come speak on behalf of Nebraska. I'm speaking to the Omaha Public Schools Midland University cohort of teachers on September 29th. The Omaha Public Schools does a really good partnership and collaboration with Midland University, where they have a campus in Omaha where they actually do teacher preparation, which is really, really valuable during the course of a teacher shortage. And then I was actually asked by the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, UNCW, to speak at their Aspiring Educators Conference on November 5th via Zoom. And I have been invited to speak to the educators in the Philippines. The time for that will be determined via Zoom, but yes, the Philippines did reach out to me. I don't know how they heard of me in Nebraska. Probably I went viral, I would say. So I will be speaking to educators in the Philippines. So currently I've given 44 speeches to date, and those includes keynotes, professional developments, and professional workshops. My upcoming toy events will be the Educational Testing Service Campus, the ETS campus in Princeton, New Jersey on October 27th and 29th, and kind of the granddaddy of them all, the College Football National Championship, January 6th through the 10th of 2023, and that will officially close my tenure as your 2022 Nebraska Teacher of the Year. So with that, I will entertain any questions. Thank you for your time.
Maureen.
Well, Lee, you've learned so much in areas that you never knew before. Just think what you're going to be teaching your daughter.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Natalia will appreciate it. Thank you for all your work.
No, thank you.
You're inspiring.
Well, it certainly has grown. The Nebraska Teacher of the Year has grown into something much larger since 2006. But it is joyous to see how much you savored some of the same things that I savored. The White House to me was, I know my mouth. I was a typical little Nebraska girl with my mouth hanging open the whole way.
Yeah, I choked up a little bit.
Yeah,
it
me
was
too.
really powerful.
Me
it was
too.
something.
And I loved Space Camp. So, and the Rocket Boys, I like science a lot. So, yeah, I have wonderful pictures of me flying through zero G with hair and all that sort of thing. But anyway, I'm so excited to watch you for the rest of the time you are Nebraska Teacher of the Year, but you will always be the Nebraska Teacher of the Year 2022. So it's a responsibility, and it looks to me like you're going to more than live up to it. So thank you very much for representing us and being here.
All right, thank you very much.
Congratulations on that precious baby.
Oh, thank you.
My question is, you were a superior teacher before you were selected Teacher of the Year. With all of the experiences you have had, what did you bring back to your classroom that might have affected how you approach your students in some way?
Just kind of the learning piece. There are about 4 or 5 other state teachers of the year that teach TESOL and ELL or ESL or whatever acronym you want to call it, English language learners, second language acquisition. So just being able to network with them and, text them or email them or send them a Facebook message and say, hey, like, what strategy do you do for this? Or, when you have kids from, I know you have a lot of experience with kids from Afghanistan. I'm starting to get more kids from Afghanistan. How can you work with these families and these communities? I think the networking piece, because sometimes you talk to other educators in your field and in your expertise and you realize, wow, why, I've been doing this 16 years, why did I never think of that? Or why did that never cross my mind? And then the same token that is reciprocal. Sometimes I'll present on something and they'll be like, wow, Lee, I never thought of that. So I think the networking piece and being able to collaborate with these amazing human beings and these amazing teachers has probably been the biggest takeaway that I have gotten out of this experience so far. And that's saying a lot because, that's like a loaded question. There's just so much going on. But yeah, just being able to talk and communicate with other people in my field about how to make me a better educator, because that's the thing. I want to be better at my craft every day. So thank you.
Well, congratulations,
Oh,
and
thank
thank
you.
you for all that you've accomplished.
Thank you.
back and visit us again.
Yes,
we want
for
to
sure.
know. We want a continued dialogue about where you're going and what you're doing and what happened in your speech for the
Yes.
Philippines.
And finally, Commissioner, I got to throw that in there, sir. So that's at
I about wore that tie today, too.
That's at Administrator's Day. Thank you all for all you do, and take care and have a good day.
Agenda item 3.1, 3.1A, Commissioner.
Yeah, so to a little bit of our routine, we do have one more presentation, but just a quick review over the agenda, and I will highlight that we've put a kind of a time certain for public comment later at 1 o'clock, and so we'll continue our business as we can. We may take a break yet. We were just talking about whenever that may occur, so appreciate that. Part of the items, I don't believe I have any items to remove from consent agenda, so I believe that's accurate, and so that's all in normal order. And really with that, I'll move on to our next special presentation, if that's all right, Madam President. So
That is fine with me.
yeah, so I welcome up Kelly Heineke, who's going to introduce our next speaker. I think that's how we're going to play this one out. I will say, just as they're coming up, so we heard from NACD, right? So that's the, as Sarah and Jenny presented, I think Sarah gave a pretty good little overview, but I'll remind you, we have NACD and then we have NCTE. And so NACD is the association that as Sarah and Jenny said, the association of our educator preparation programs, and they've done great work, but they are, many of them, also very associated with the Nebraska Council on Teacher Education. And so I will turn it over to our fabulous Kelly Heineke to introduce the next speaker.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Kelly Heineke. I'm the Director of Educator Preparation Program Approval for the NDE, and I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Mark Lenahan. He is the president, as the commissioner said, of the Nebraska Council on Teacher Education, NCTE, and our purpose today is the annual presentation to the state board of the NCTE per the NCTE organizational policies, which are approved annually by the state board. So he's here today to share some information about the organization, and I just want to give a little intro about Dr. Lenahan. He was born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, and he started his career in education in 1990 at a Catholic school in St. Paul as a physical education and health instructor, and then he moved on to administration there in 1996. He then moved to Battle Creek, Nebraska, and he became a junior and senior high principal in 2005. He was hired into his current position as the superintendent at Wayne Community Schools in 2009, and I am delighted to announce that he was most recently named the 2022 NCSA State Superintendent of the Year this summer, so congratulations.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for having me today. I know you have a very busy agenda, so I will be brief, but I really wanted to take an opportunity to just talk a little bit about NCTE and our mission and how we function as a group. And so first, I'd like to introduce our executive board, many of which are here today. Kelly Heineke and Brad Dirksen are our NDE staff that attend all of our meetings, and also Sarah Skretta and Jenny Jansky, who you heard from before, are on our executive board, along with Caroline Rice and Susan Stanky. And so, which one do you think it is? This one?
Yep.
All right. You're going to see my technology skills at work here. I was, in 1990, we did chalk point presentations, not PowerPoint. So the Nebraska Council on Teacher Education is an advisory body to the State Board of Education. The membership provides equal representation from statewide organizations that have a direct involvement in teacher prep and administrator prep. It's a very unique structure. We took some time a couple years ago to kind of look at some of the history and found that there's only one other state that has a similar structure, and that's the state of Georgia. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how we operate. First, as I mentioned, we advise to the state board and provide recommendations for approval on rule. Did that not go? Sorry. There we go. So Rule 20, the regulations for approval of teacher prep education programs. Rule 21, which is issuance of certificates and permits. Rule 23, which talks about basic skills competency. And Rule 24, which talks about certificate endorsements. And so that's what we work on and bring forward recommendations or advisory role to the state board. We have representation from 3 groups. It's an equal representation. The Nebraska Council of School Administrators, which is the group I represent. This also includes 2 members from the Nebraska Association of School Boards. The Nebraska State Education Association, which includes 2 teachers that are appointed by the state board, and the Nebraska Council for the Accreditation of Teacher Education, or NACTE. This is a very unique process and a very effective way for all of us to communicate and work together. I found as a school administrator, it really is a great way to gain a lot of perspective on things that higher ed is going through in terms of all of the teacher prep things that they have to do, and also working with the teachers that represent NSEA. It's just been a wonderful experience for me to be part of, and certainly provides for a lot of stakeholder input. The council also has ad hoc committees that do a lot of work on endorsements, and so these committees are comprised of pre-K through 20 educators, and basically it's a balanced representative body of people that are in specific endorsement areas. They're experts, and their role really is to review and update criteria for endorsements and bring them forward to the council. Our structure for meetings, we meet 3 times a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, once in the summer. The meetings are conducted under the Nebraska Open Meeting Act. We do have a section for public comment. Usually it's right away as the meeting begins. And then also our executive committee meets 3 times a year, usually about 60 days ahead of the full council meeting. And so at those meetings, we plan our agenda, we talk about initiatives and things going on with the council. And then we also need to get that agenda posted within 30 days prior to the full council meeting. So all of that information is posted on the Department of Education website and pretty easy to find. The format for our meetings basically follows some main areas. We have our general session. We open the meeting. As I mentioned, typically we provide opportunity for public comment at that time, go over our consent information. Then we'll have some information that takes place. So maybe topics pertaining to NCTE. We might have guest speakers. Typically, this is when the ad hoc committee will do a presentation. If they're working on a certain endorsement, they will give a presentation to the full council. We've also had speakers from the Dyslexia Foundation, other things that are pertaining to education that fit within our mission. And we're very excited at our October meeting. We're actually having a panel to talk about marketing and promoting the profession of teaching. And so we're excited about what that will be in October. After the informational session, we go to committee meetings. The committees are divided into 3 equal committees. They are named A, B, and C. So pretty simple. Just got to remember which letter you're on. The committees function similar. They have a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. And the chair serves on the executive committee as well. And typically in the committee meetings, we just do some discussion on endorsements, on topics, on rule, things that NCTE works with. And then we've started in the past year or so a little different format. We'll have our committee come back and do kind of a halftime report to the full council, just kind of talking about what they've been discussing. It's really helpful because it helps everybody hear what the committees are talking about before we go back together. And typically that kind of leads us right up to a working lunch in which we'll go back and work more in our committees. From there, after that second committee session, so when they go back into session, that's where a lot of work happens. If there's a recommendation that needs to come forward, that's where the committees will do that. We'll come back for a second general session, and we'll have reports. And then if there is approvals that are being asked for the full council, really there's 3 ways that the council will deal with the recommendation. They'll either accept that recommendation at that hearing to move that forward. they might recommend that the proposed endorsement be held until the next full council meeting, which will meet in October, so that next meeting would be in February. Or the council could, or the recommendation could be that the proposed endorsement go back to the ad hoc committee for further consideration. And I've seen that, all three of those things happen during my time on the council. The process then moving forward, it really is a pretty rigorous process and takes a lot of time. It's not something that, as a school administrator, sometimes we like to, have something in front of us, have time to discuss and deal with and move on. This is a little different because we want to make sure that we get input from all stakeholders. And so the ad hoc committee will begin the process, bring it to NCTE for those first 2 hearings as I described. If they are to move forward, they go to public hearings, and then the recommendation would come to the State Board of Education at that time. So prior to coming to you, it really does go through quite a process of discussion, conversation, and so forth before a recommendation would come to the State Board. And if the State Board would choose then to move it on, it would go to the Attorney General and then finally to the Governor for approval. Some recent work and success of NDE, of NCTE, we've worked very hard on endorsements. That's one of the main things that we talk about. We've had 5 gone through the process since 2019. Those are social studies, world language, school librarian, principal, and elementary education. And then English, language arts, and secondary English are right now in the process. We've also talked a lot about the teacher shortage issue that you heard about before. We basically took from the summit that Sarah and Jenny talked about earlier, and we moved into discussion with our committees at our next meeting and really identified basically very similar barriers to the recruitment and retention issue and the teacher shortage issue that we have, and had a lot of discussion on that. We're also excited that our plan is to bring position statements forward to the State Board in the spring on some of these teacher shortage issues. So we'll continue that work and hopefully have information for you in the spring. Some of the challenges we face are no different than the challenges that local school boards are facing, that State Board of Education and higher education institutions are facing. We feel it's important to be very intentional in the areas listed, recruitment and retention of educators, improving that perception and marketing of our profession, and those certification barriers. One thing when we talk about the certification barriers, we want to make sure that if we are looking at alternate pathways or different ways leading to an endorsement, that it's still something that shows, in the end, high-quality educators. We want to make sure that we can demonstrate that those people can demonstrate competency, but we also know that we do need to continue to be creative to bring people forward. And so that's always a big discussion at our meetings. And I think just basically these things are not exclusive of what our issues are, but really the focus of the teacher shortage issue has been very important to us. And I think all of us have that responsibility. I know every time I leave a meeting on the drive home, I'm thinking of ways that I can do better at Wayne Community Schools as far as, what are we doing to recruit teachers, to work with the kids that we have, similar to what the program you heard about earlier today from Millard, and trying to really start at a young age in junior high or early high school to get kids thinking about teaching, because we all know it's a great profession, and it's something that I think I know I've been grateful that I've been able to be a part of for so long. Finally, the role that you play is very, very impactful. And I just want to thank you on behalf of NCTE and on behalf of Wayne Community Schools as well for the work that you do. It makes a difference. An example that I have for you is several years ago, Wayne was looking for a elementary counselor. And a person retired. We posted the position. We had 0 applicants for the job. And we found that part of the barrier to that was something within that endorsement that required elementary counselors to have at least 2 years of teaching experience. And it just so happened that during that time, the board was considering not having that in as part of the endorsement. So the person we hired might have been one of the first after that was approved to be able to continue on. I think you have to take 12 credit hours per year to continue working toward that master's degree in school counseling. We were able to hire her under a provisional, and she successfully completed that process and is still with us and does an excellent job. And I know there's a lot of examples around at other schools that are similar to that. And that's what I want you all to know, that it really makes a difference what you do, and it helps us. From the committee work that we've had, I wanted to include a quote. NCTE understands the importance of being in a state that has an elected board of education that supports local control with a focus on quality education for all students in Nebraska. The influence you have on local boards and education in our state is paramount to our success. And we just appreciate all the work that you have done and the work that you will continue to do, setting the tone and really leading education in the state of Nebraska. And so on behalf of NCTE, I just want to say thank you. And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Questions? Kurt?
So you are in charge of what is, eventually it has to be approved by the governor, though,
Correct.
right? Correct, so it's got to go to Attorney General and the governor. So you're in charge of what is, in a broad sense, what is taught to our future educators. Is that a good summary?
I don't know if that's quite, first of all, we advise, and so
Sure.
It's not anything that we have any authority over as far as being able to approve. Our role is to advise the board.
Right.
And we also are not, I guess, involved specifically with educator prep institutions as to exactly how they will go forward, but the endorsements do outline things that need to be addressed.
Okay. That was my follow-up question, was the specific curriculum is up to each individual institution.
Correct.
Okay, broad scope, and then they choose whatever.
They have to meet those requirements of that endorsement.
And their curriculum needs to match those requirements. But each individual institution that's up to them. Okay, thank you.
I think as long as they meet those endorsements requirements, that's the important thing there.
Jacqueline?
Hi. So we met yesterday in a committee meeting of the board, and we were discussing what our legislative priorities are going to be going into the next legislative session. We haven't decided on them. Preview. No, but as we're looking at that, one of the things I've been really wanting us to make sure is that we're all aligned, and that's the board being aligned with the department, and with teachers and with, and also superintendents, and making sure as we look at the teacher shortage, what are we going to do and kind of what are our thoughts? And so if you have any insight into, I think one of your slides said you guys are going to start kind of enumerating what those priorities are, and putting it into writing. Have you guys started to have some, by you guys, the organization or teachers, or even in your individual capacity, started to discuss what some of those ideas are, kind of the direction that you want to see us go, and so just so that we can have some insight as we start to develop our priorities?
We have. I think that's the strength of NCTE too, is that, it really does involve those three different organizations that impact, and it's what I've found is for me personally is just been one of the best pieces of professional development that I can have, because I hear a lot from the teachers and the institutions. And so we began that work really after the teacher shortage summit that occurred last fall, and that's our plan, to continue those discussions, and hopefully by spring have something in writing that we can present to the state board that really reflects where the NCTE would like to advise the state board.
And also, I'd just like to add that those legislative priorities, once they are established by the board, always are informing our work as well. So it's a two-way street for sure. We are an advisory board to you, an advisory committee to you, but your legislative priorities really do influence our work as well. So having that dialogue is essential.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Yeah, and just knowing Mark's favorite football team, row the boat, right? And so he's a Golden Gopher guy. Yeah. No, but I do think, and why this presentation is important, and we've probably been interrupted by the pandemic in this kind of routine to have these presentations in front of the board. But I do want you to see that some of that role is spelled out, and then our staff works with this group and other groups to try to get that in line. And I do think we had a great conversation, as Jacqueline mentioned, about, what are the priorities, how do we do that, and the importance of kind of that feedback loop. And so it might be, Kelly, that maybe we could spend a little bit of time talking through some of those things, at least that in Mark we could do that and have a bit of that conversation to help further inform the board's priorities, because I really caught it this time and I hadn't thought about it much. Sometimes our advisory groups are waiting for the board to say this is our priority, and our advisory groups, or you might be waiting on the advisory groups to say these are our priorities. So we won't get stuck in that again. Let's find a way that we can kind of play that out. Again, back to the NACD and other partners that are part of the conversations. For us, in order to affect, if it's legislation, we really need to think of those priorities kind of in this moment in time to be able to advance that, or budget, or any of those things. And again, I guess that's the row the boat moment, and it seems to be working up there. I don't know.
Well, they won last night, so. But, I agree with all of that, and I do think it's really important that all of us take that responsibility and that we are aligned. And I think if we do that, one thing I've found moving from Minnesota to Nebraska is Nebraskans really do a wonderful job working together to attain a goal. And, the pandemic might be a good example of that. We're mostly back in school that next year. And that was paramount. A lot of states were not in school for a whole year, and we were back at it right away that fall because we worked together. And I think if we continue that, there's going to be a lot of very positive things that'll come out of that, for our students.
I have one more question. One other thing, and I noticed on the PowerPoint, and I just remember, improve the perception and marketing of the profession. And so I think there are many ways to address the teacher shortage, but I see the perception and marketing of the profession, it's a piece, but I think it's a big piece. And so I'm just wondering, kind of, do you think that's a matter of funding? Do you think it's a matter of talking points? Is it kind of having advocates like the Teacher of the Year, making sure that we are, supporting that kind of work? What are some of the things that you see as challenges, and how do we start to change the narrative that because I think right now we see a lot of media about the challenges of teachers in the classroom and, the struggles that we're having. And I worry that while it's important to get the message out there, it may also be deterring people from the profession. And so what are some of the things, if you have any ideas, and not to put you on the spot, that we can start doing? Because I know sometimes it costs money to do marketing and sometimes it's free. And so what are some of those ideas, if you have any?
All of those things, funding, advice, for sure. That work has started across the state already. So you're aware that the grants that were issued through NDE to help support that work. So that conversation is ongoing. It has been going. And one of the things that we are working on in particular to promote the profession is during our next October NCTE meeting, we will actually be inviting panelists to come and speak from across the state on the work that is happening in the private and public sectors as well, to help then inform our conversation. And the goal from that will be then to form a position statement based on some of the information and data that we'll be gathering from what's happening across the state to present to the board in the spring.
And I think, there's so many success stories. There's so many things, just the presentation that was given from Millard. I'm I got a 2-hour drive home, so I'm going to start thinking about things that we can do. I mean, there's so many good things that are going on, and I think sometimes, we get bogged down with the things maybe that aren't working, and there's always going to be challenges. But I do think that it's really important for all of us to think about the positive things that are going on in Nebraska, and really trying to get the word out on those and making sure that junior high kids know what a great profession this is. And so I think we have work to do there, but I think we can just talk about the good things that are happening, and that will make a big difference too. That doesn't cost anything to do either.
You have a question? No. Wouldn't it be nice to hear first graders say, oh, I want to be a fireman when I grow up. I want to be a policeman. I want to be a teacher when I grow up. That would be a nice thing to hear. I've always thought we should start even sooner than junior high. I not only want to thank you for being here, for the information that you've presented, but thank you for your show of appreciation for what the state board is doing. How refreshing to hear compliments for the board that I think is really a stunning board that's working very, very hard every day. They spend a lot of time that nobody knows about. So, and you know about it because you're on a board and working with committees and that sort of thing. So somebody saying that they appreciate it is really, really important to hear. And so thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being of service to education in Nebraska.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay, the board will be taking a 10-minute break right now. Agenda item 4, the President's Report. I wanted to start the President's Report with something that happened yesterday that I thought was so good that it's worth repeating over and over again. And so I want to thank the commissioner and the staff for the work session that they did with us on accountability. And this is, I'm getting pretty close to my 7th year on the school board. And this seems to be a trend. We've had another one of those. But I was surprised at the information that I learned yesterday that gave me a new insight into AQuest and accountability. And, you might think the longer you serve that you know everything. I never think that, but I surely don't think it after I listen to them. So the first thing I want to do as president is to not only congratulate the presenters for an excellent job, but the second thing, part of that is I want to request more. As a board, we all want to be informed, and we want our depth of knowledge to make us serve our constituents, our students, and everybody in education better. So those of you who missed it, you really missed something really fantastic. And maybe this will give you the impetus next time to know that when we have a session, I gave Kirk a little bit of grief yesterday about it, but anyway, I can do that, I'm sure, and he doesn't dare hurt me, right? Anyways, so anyway, please know that we really appreciated it, our leadership giving us the opportunity to learn more. We're teachers, but teachers are naturally learners as well. So that's the first thing I wanted to start with. Thank you very much to the staff and the commissioner and all of his people that he works with closely for making that possible for us yesterday. And I see lots of board members shaking their heads yes, so I wanted to do that first off. The next thing that, so also I don't want to recognize anybody individually if I missed somebody on that, but the presenters were absolutely wonderful. I also want to do a congratulations I think sometimes our staff members work so hard and they don't always get kudos for what they do, and especially to be gender equitable, Deborah, okay. I would like to congratulate St. Ambrija and Deborah Friesen for an honor that they've received. They've both been selected as finalists in the Inspiring Women event that is inspiring if you've never heard of it. And so they're narrowed down to a very few. And I can see why, because we're all inspired by their work. So congratulate them. I thought today our people that came in to show the positive work were extraordinary. And I loved how we celebrated the positive things going on. And I had a quote that I had picked to end this president's report with. You know that I love to read, and I love quotations from famous people and how they became successful. And so I want to end with this for you because I think it summarizes our past couple of years. Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in their life, as by the obstacles which she has overcome while trying to succeed. So I want to thank my board for overcoming obstacles, keeping your chin up, and keeping on. So that's my president's report for today. Agenda item 5, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Maureen. Is there a second? Per board policy, there is no discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda. Andrea, please read the roll.
Fricke? Yes. Neary?
Yes.
Penner?
Yes.
Goebbels? Stevens?
Yes.
Morrison? Yes. Nichols?
Yes.
Kojons?
Yes.
7 yes, 1 absent.
The motion passes. Agenda item 6.1. Vice Chair Robin Stevens will provide a report from the Executive Committee meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I start with our brief report, I do want you to know that there has been a slight change in the Executive Committee and the way we are meeting at our times. There's 2 reasons that we're doing this. Number one, it allows us as Executive Committee members to be more involved in the committees that we are not, or that we are involved in outside of the Executive Committee. And then the second thing is we have found that a lot of our work, there's just a lot to our work, and so we are meeting via Zoom on 2 Thursdays a month. And our last meeting was the 25th. And so the report that I am giving to you is what was brought up on the 25th. So just so you know, that's a little bit change in our structure, but hopefully that will make our committee more effective, more efficient in being heads up in the committees, especially the ones that are not part of the Executive Committee. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. So the report that I am giving is for last Thursday's Zoom meeting that we had. And it is a brief report, but yet important. The committee has no action items or discussion items for the board. The committee did have 2 updated items to report to the board. The first is related to the commissioner's appraisal process. The committee is working with NDE Human Resources staff to develop an appraisal evaluation instrument for the current contract year, in other words, 22-23. The committee also discussed its short-term plans with the commissioner that was presented at the August 2022 meeting, the August 25th meeting. The current executive committee short-term plan, the one that I just referenced, is attached in Spark, and I think it was fairly recent, so there is a chance that you did not get an opportunity to look at that, but I would just encourage you to do so, as I think that it gives you a good summary of where we are with our short-term planning, and of course working with the commissioner on that short-term plan. Other than possible questions, that concludes the executive committee report.
Thank you, Robin. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Chair Maureen Nichols, please provide a report from the Budget and Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you, President Kojans. The Committee on Budget and Finance met yesterday afternoon. There was no discussion over the previous committee notes. We had no consent agenda items. We do have 2 action items to bring forth to you today, and one is on accepting the Afghan Refugee School Impact Supplements Federal Grant Award that we've received and entering into a cooperative agreement with the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. The DHHS reached out to NDE to administer this grant to both Afghan students and parents. Parents are included in this grant due to significant cultural issues that affect their children's educational needs. The grant fund use is relatively wide open, so NDE will be identifying areas of need that they will have long-term impacts, not just short-term. These funds will be targeted to the areas with the highest percentage of refugees. The committee supported bringing this item forward to the full board. And in our discussion, it was really interesting to see our people coming over from different countries and settling in our country. Their cultural differences, in many of them, are so much different than ours. They don't realize it. We don't realize it. And so working with these parents is imperative that have children in the schools so that they understand how we do it in America. It doesn't mean that they are wrong, but to avoid any problems that they encounter along the way. So this is a really awesome grant that we are receiving, and Dr. Rita is working to see that it works well and that there's a long-term plan for it. The other action item you'll be working on is to authorize the commissioner to submit the biennial budget request. This budget was discussed last month by Bryce Wilson and Jen. You received a full copy of it, the full board, a couple of weeks ago to react to it. The staff did a short presentation yesterday highlighting the NDE's budget breakouts of funding sources and uses. And additionally, the NDE reviewed the budget issues that will be submitted as part of the budget process. The committee discussed the budget submission and supported bringing it to the full board. There was no discussion regarding the monthly board travel expense report or the in-state travel authorization reports. There was a committee item update on reviewing potential deficit budget items with the state board in preparation for an October board agenda item to authorize the commissioner to submit the department's deficit budget request for the year, fiscal year 22-23. And that concludes the budget and finance report.
Any further discussion? Jacqueline?
I have one question. My question is actually for the commissioner. Maureen, if you don't mind, can I ask the commissioner a question as it relates to the budget?
Yes.
So one of the things that was submitted in the Budget and Finance Committee, well, in the report or the budget request that we're sending to the legislature, was an increase in amount that we would need for rent to pay for our new building. And I didn't bring this up in the Budget Committee because I don't think that this is relevant to Bryce's work, but I do think it's relevant for us to have an understanding. I know when the department that I previously worked for was asked to leave or vacate the Nebraska State Office building, that agency had to come up with its own funds to be able to support that move, and that came from DAS. And so one of the questions I had is, when those conversations came up when we were on the 6th floor of the state office building, whether, I don't know if our lease terminated, if it expired, but I know a lot of agencies were forced, what I believe was forced to move. We didn't necessarily get resources from the state to be able to do that. And so can you tell me a little bit more about when we were asked to leave that building, or how what were the circumstances behind us leaving? And then did DAS give you anything for this move, or what was that like? Because that's a pretty significant amount that we're asking the legislature for, but I think a significant amount that may have been out of our control. And so if you could elaborate on that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll try to walk a little through the timeline and off the top of my head, I might be a little off, but in the midst of the pandemic, and there was a decision by, I don't know, powers beyond me, right, relative to what buildings would be built for the state and what would happen. And there was talk about these moving of agencies around. We, as a non-code agency, right, not underneath the governor, we weren't privy necessarily to all those moving parts, and certainly DAS is part of that particular process. But at some point, and I want to say it was in the summer of 2020, that decision was made not to build additional building sites, and then that kind of created a domino effect of where agencies would go, because I think there were some plans to put different agencies together. Over the years, I had heard that they wanted to try to get DHHS into one location, and that they were hopeful that they could get other agencies kind of into one location. And so never real formal conversations that were taking place, but I said, hey, look, we have 3 different major offices in Lincoln, and it'd be nice to be in that plan, to be part of something that would come together in that regard. One of the things that I think happened in that summer, of course, we went remote at that point because of the pandemic. And some point in that summertime, June, July, somewhere in there, I started conversations with, and the person's name's going to escape me because it was someone that was kind of in the position of building division at that time, kind of saying, hey, look, would you be willing to move? Would you be interested in moving? Would you be, sometimes those were, we want to do this, right? And then would you be willing? And so our lease came to an end. Of course, we lease our space from DAS, just I think every agency probably does that in the way that that's managed. Once I said, hey, look, we would explore that, we actually hired somebody to do some of the architectural work, go on what would it take. Like it's just really, from my standpoint, just looking at that. And so that would have been the summer. By, I think, the fall of 2020, and the exact date might not be perfect, we started to learn that DAS was putting out RFPs for potential space. In December of 2020, actually the building that we now are able to start moving into and start being in was one of the places they said, could you walk through and look at that particular space? We weren't part of the original RFP, we were just kind of, and then suddenly it was like, hey, look, would this space work for you? And then that was like in December of 20, sometime probably between Christmas and New Year's. And then I remember it was Jason Jackson, who's the head of DAS, called me on January 6th. And I remember that date because that's a pretty big date in the country at that time. But that evening, About 4:30 in that afternoon, he calls and says, "Can you do me a favor, and could you be out by March 1st?" And so that transitioned quickly, and I said, "Hey, my staff are going to go crazy, and I don't know if we can pull it off." And we went back and had the conversation and said yes. And I think in the long run, you know, and I always say this, I think this is the right move for the agency. We'll be in one space, but we were asked to move in a very short order of time. We were the first agency to move out, but we weren't necessarily given that plan to how do we organize funds, what's the expectations of it, how do you go about doing that? And so we worked with the legislature at that point, and they said, hey, once you know your costs, come back to us. And the governor also put into his budget last year part of our costs for the initial phases of the move. Knowing that we'd be across another biennium, it's also important that we were able to come back and ask for more. And so that's really what we're doing. The costs of the lease are given to us by DAS. They negotiate those particular contracts and put us in that position, and that's our landlord, I guess, so to say. And so a lot of those processes, it wasn't something that we were actively pursuing at that time, and in a pretty short window of time, it became a reality. You've seen the backside of that. It's been tough to get set back up. So we moved out very efficiently, thanks to a lot of our key staff. We didn't, you know, had to go order boxes, right? I mean, we weren't out of there. Truly, our team was out and moved our stuff out, but not set up in the other location. And there's been a lot of details back and forth in that time. Many of those things outside of our control. And again, I'm grateful for the move. I think it's going to be great for the agency in the long run. But that's why we have to come back. We weren't probably on the front end of the planning as I would have been able to, or would have preferred. And it happened to be kind of a series of events that put us in that circumstance today. I hope that helps anyway.
Yeah, can I? So my concern is when I look at that number, I think we are asking for additional rent for about $500,000 a year going forward. I know it's not all coming from the general fund. Some of it's going to be divided between federal dollars, but the increase, at least, it's over $300,000 a year. And I just have reason to believe the legislature didn't, or the legislative branch didn't necessarily know everything that was going on in the executive branch in this moving of leases and spaces. And I think a lot of it was done in the name of saving the state costs. And so we were going to consolidate a lot of these buildings. Some people were working from home. We could decrease our footprint as the state. We could decrease cost. And now we're at a time where we're asking for more money for something that was said to decrease costs. And so what I don't want is when we take our budget to the legislature and say, hey, we need this extra money to be able to cover our rent, for that to fall on the Department of saying we weren't responsible or we wanted this move or we're costing the state dollars, when I know some of this had our hands tied and we really didn't have a lot of control in what happened. And so I want to make sure that we all understand the circumstances that happened, so that when we're asked why we need to ask for more money, we understand it's because in some ways we had choice, but in some ways we didn't. If we didn't have a say in what happened with that RFP that went out, and if DAS did that, if they wouldn't renew our lease, that they did that. If they said you got to be out in 3 months, that was out of our control. And so much of this was out of our control, and I just want to make sure we understand we're not going asking for money on our behalf. It's because a lot of this we didn't have control over. That's it.
Yeah, and I'll add just one thing that made me think of something as you were talking. So that also the kind of the costs of rent, there's an analysis that was being done along those lines of some state agencies like HHS, where they're moving into that space, was cheaper per square foot than the space that we ended up with, for instance, right? Now, their trade-off was they were coming out of otherwise commercially leased space, and they were trying to get them all there. So I think we've had quite a few conversations of where's that now fit kind of within that whole picture. I know we had conversations with Senator Stinner last year about how that kind of fit together, and he had questions, you know, how that was being done, but we've appreciated that. Appreciated actually that the governor's office included a lot of work back and forth with us at that time. They did include that, some of those costs within their budget. Obviously in an administration change, I'm gonna have to explain all this over and over and over again, and so I appreciate you, Jacqueline, bringing that up. So hopefully you have a little bit better understanding, but we'll kind of have to keep putting that information in front of some new people that are going to be there too. So thank you.
Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2? See.
I think perhaps Robin had a question, perhaps?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Maureen. First of all, I appreciate the comment from Jacqueline. I think that's really excellent in your explanation. Thank you. I do want you to know, though, from a more positive stance, Lisa and I went out yesterday and toured the 584th Street building. And I've been out there, I think, 3 times now since all of this started happening. And it was really encouraging for me to see some real progress taking place out there. It will be really nice for the board and the department to have a, quote, home that you really haven't had over the last however many months. But really good points from Jacqueline, and appreciate your explanation on that too.
Maureen. Oh, do you have your hand up too? Okay, all right.
Sorry, I'll keep it quick, but just on that topic, I just, we haven't really talked about this a lot publicly, but we really appreciate our team members, our NDE staff members, for really working around all the challenges that they faced over the last 2 years. They've been homeless because of this big office change, and it's been a lot of extra work, and during a pandemic and all the other challenges facing education. And so just wanted to say we see you and we appreciate all the extra work, and it's going to be fabulous. I agree with what you said, Robin. I'm very excited about the new home.
Okay, third time's a charm. Okay, Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2C?
Yes, Madam President. I move to authorize the Commissioner to accept the Afghan Refugee School Impact Supplements Federal Grant Award and enter into cooperative agreement with the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services.
Is there a second?
The motion was made by Maureen Nichols and seconded by Lisa Fricke.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Andrea, please call the roll.
Neary?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Fricke? Yes. Nichols?
Yes.
Goebbels? Morrison? Yes. Penner?
Yes.
Kojons?
Yes.
7
motion-
yes, 1 absent.
Okay, sorry. The motion passed. Maureen, is there a motion on item 6.2D?
Yes, Madam President. I move to authorize the Commissioner to submit the biennial budget request.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion was made by Maureen Nichols, seconded by Robin Stevens.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Andrea, please call the roll.
Morrison? Fricke? Yes. Nichols?
Yes.
Goebbels? Kojons?
Yes.
Neary?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Penner?
Yes.
7 yes, 1 absent.
Check the time. 10:55, should we keep going? Okay, all right. The motion passed. Thank you, Ryan. Agenda item 6.3. Chair Patty Goebbels, please provide a report from the Planning and Evaluation Committee. Maureen?
I do not have that report.
I have that report.
Okay.
So present in our meeting, Robin Stevens, Kirk Penner, and myself. We have 2 action items today. Robin will be presenting an action item 2.1A, which is the approval of Nebraska's College and Career Ready Standards for Mathematics. In August, the staff members of NDE provided the board with a presentation and draft of the proposed revisions. This month, we were provided information regarding changes between August and September, and also shared letters of support provided by the Nebraska University System, the Nebraska State College System, and the Nebraska Association of Teachers of Mathematics. And our committee does recommend approval of the mathematics standards. The second item of action that we're bringing today, Kirk Penner will bring forward, and it's item 2.1B. It's the approval of Rule 11 teacher waiver request for York Public Schools, and this waiver is similar to others previously approved by the board. We also had two discussion items for upcoming that will have action items in upcoming meetings. Item 2.2A. We are looking at the resolution declaring the state board support for LR 335, the state's post-secondary attainment goal. The goal declares for the state of Nebraska that we will have at least 70% of 25 to 34-year-old Nebraskans will have a degree, a certificate, a diploma, or other post-secondary or industry recognized credential with economic value by 2030. And so next month we will be acting on the resolution to support this attainment goal. And then lastly, we'll have an update next month for item 2.3A, the learning community of Douglas and Sarpy County and their community achievement plan. We'll be hearing the updates next month, and then we'll be taking action on that for approval in November. This concludes the Planning and Evaluation Committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Deborah, is there a motion on item 6.3A?
Madam Chair, I have a motion. I move approval of the Nebraska College and Career Ready Standards for Mathematics.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion was made by Robin Stevens, second by Maureen Nichols.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay. Seeing none, Andrea, please call the roll.
Stevens?
Yes.
Neary?
Yes.
Morrison? Yes. Kojons?
Yes.
Penner?
Yes.
Goebbels? Nichols?
Yes.
Fricke? Yes. 7 yes, 1 absent.
The motion passed. So who is, Deborah? Are you?
I've got
Kirk?
it.
You're going to do it, Kirk?
Yep,
Okay.
6.3B, I move to approve Rule 11 teacher waiver request for York Public Schools.
Okay, is there a second? Deborah?
Motion was made by Kirk Penner, seconded by Deborah Neary.
Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay. Andrea, please call the roll.
Goebbels? Neary?
Yes.
Kojons?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Fricke?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Penner?
Yes.
Morrison? Yes. 7 yes, 1 absent.
The motion passed. That's okay. Agenda item 6.3C. Lane Carr.
Lane wasn't able to give this presentation, I was. So Deborah, did you want any further discussion on the attainment goal? I thought you gave a great summary, by the way.
I did.
So.
Okay, all right, thank you. Agenda item 6.4 and 6.4A. Vice Chair Lisa Fricke, please provide a report from the Rules and Regulations Committee meeting.
Yes, Madam Chair. The Rules Committee report is from yesterday, September 1st, 2022. The committee reviewed the report on rules, and there is no action on the rules at this time. The committee had no action items or discussion items for the board. The committee did have 2 update items. The committee reviewed the current board legislative regulatory priorities, and we had a really good discussion about potentially reducing the number of priorities simply so we can concentrate and maybe get more things done. Committee members provided input to NDE staff on future priorities, as well as considering setting priorities for the biennial legislature as opposed to the practice of doing it every year. And we thought that would be more effective that way. The committee also discussed narrowing and focusing legislative priorities. As I said, the current priorities will be shared with the board members, and board members are encouraged to review the priorities. Please do that and submit any suggestions or edits to the vice chair. The committee will bring a draft to the board for consideration at a future date. So please, really, they will put the priorities on Spark. Please read them and send any suggestions or edits to me. The committee also reviewed the process for revising and repealing rules. The committee discussed potential options for Rule 23 and the basic competency testing because of recent legislation related to the topic. So the committee will hear a proposal from an NDE staff member in November. This concludes my rules report.
Are there any questions for Lisa on her report? Kurt?
So this is the committee that would take care of teacher certification, is that right? Certification. So is that the report we're waiting for in November, or did you talk about that at all? Did I miss any of that? That was kind of a hot button issue at the NSCA meeting that we went to. So just curious.
Yeah, we discussed Rule 23 at length, and by reviewing that and directing NDE staff to come up with something in November, I will be able to better answer that after the proposal that we will hear in November. So I could answer your questions better knowing that there's something in the works at this time. Does that make sense? Because I could answer according to our discussion, but I'd rather wait for the report in November. Good question.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
All of our minds.
Good.
You know, for sure. Because what your question entails would not only affect Rule 23, but 21 as well. So thank you for your patience and waiting.
It's moving.
Yeah. Slowly but surely.
Maureen, please provide a report from the ad hoc committee on the board policy manual revision.
Thank you, President Kojans. Patty Goebbels normally would have read the report. The ad hoc committee has been very hard at work. Members consist of Chair Patty Goebbels, Kirk Penner, and myself, along with Ryan Four from the staff working with the committee. We have met twice since we met as a full board in October, or at the August board meeting. We have carefully reviewed the bylaws. We have looked in depth at each one, looking at wording, changing wording, and ensuring that there is no duplication. Our next meeting is next Friday, September 9th. At this meeting, the plans are to renumber the board bylaws and to begin review on the board operational policies. The goal is to present the package of the revised policy manual to the full board for discussion in November, with board action in December. This concludes my report.
Is there any further discussion or questions for Maureen? Yes, Jacqueline.
I have some questions as they relate to the action item, and so I can ask them now, or so my first
question. It'd be
question.
better to bring them up after I've read You're talking about the resolution?
Yep, so it is, but let me ask a general question first, and then I can ask it as it relates to the action item. Do we have what was the exact purpose of the ad hoc committee? Like when the ad hoc committee was formed, what specifically were the duties or responsibilities that we gave this ad hoc committee?
Well, I'll try to answer that for you, Jacqueline, but it was determined that many of the sections of the policy playbook or handbook were outdated or needed revision or being updated and revised, I think, so that it'd been a long time. And Ryan or Commissioner, you might be able to tell me how long it had been since that had been revised.
I'll go back to what I understood from the time of that Patty Goebbels had actually done kind of an overview of the policy. I think that continued from some of the previous policy committee's recommendation, and there was an intent to look at the structure of the policies, ensure that those were in alignment. I know I have two ad hoc committee members that could speak. I have not participated in the meetings, and I know Ryan probably could speak to it, but if I say something that's not accurate from that background, what I understood, President Coe-Jones, is that the committee was doing that work to kind of present the structure that's in alignment with some of that work that's taken place over the last, that ad hoc committee, and I think we had some prior work in a policy committee review. So,
Ryan, do you have anything more to add to that? No?
I would like to just add, I was president when Patty came on board, and she recognized that there was a lot of overlap between what she perceived as board operational policies were inside bylaws, and they really needed to be separated out. And so that was really one of her goals, is to see them more defined and separated, so it would be better outlined for everybody. And I think that's our goal.
And I've heard that you guys have worked really, really hard on it too, so kudos for that. Yes, Jacqueline.
So I'm asking because one of the things that I just haven't been clear on, and I think I've asked this question in several iterations. When prior to the last ad hoc committee meeting or convening and coming out with recommendations, and I believe I was on the last policy committee, Patty had been working with Ryan without an ad hoc committee on concerns or what would it look like to update our policy reference manual. And my understanding was concern or kind of wanting to redefine some terms and particularly change the structure of things. And so if we were calling something a bylaw, perhaps it needed a different term. If we had a policy directive, perhaps it needed a different term, and really just focusing on the structure. And so I see reorganizing a structure very different from reorganizing or changing substance. And so as I start to look at the resolution that's going to be presented today, before we get there, I want to know, when the president created this ad hoc committee, was this committee formed for the purpose of reorganizing the manual in terms of structure, or were they also given the authority or the ability to start to work on the substance of the manual? I don't see those two as one thing. And so I need to understand what it is that they were asked by the president to work on.
Well, I think they were asked to work on both. That's my understanding of that. That as Patty went through it, as I said, there was words, which would be substance, and the style, which would be structure. There were things that needed to be updated in both areas, and so that's what I asked the committee to do.
Okay. I'll ask my next question once the action item is introduced.
Okay. All right. Maureen, do you have a motion on item 7.1A?
Yes, President Kojans, the resolution to revise the State Board of Education Policy Reference Manual. Whereas President Patsy Kojans appointed Patty Goebel's chair, Maureen Nichols, and Kirk Penner to an ad hoc committee to explore revisions to the State Board of Education Policy Reference Manual. Whereas the ad hoc committee has met to review the current policy reference manual, review board policies from other states, review Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, and recommends that structural changes to the policy reference manual be proposed to the State Board for consideration. And whereas the ad hoc committee intends to make final recommendations to the board at the November 2022 meeting with recommended adoption at the December 2022 meeting, now and therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education adopts the following definitions to direct the work of the ad hoc committee. Bylaws, the board's own basic rules relating principally to itself as an organization. Board operational policies, the board's policies that relate to and support the policymaking, rulemaking, and quasi-judicial responsibilities of the board. They specify how board members are to conduct themselves and interact with individuals and external entities. Agency management policies, the board's policies that define how the State Board intends the Department of Education to operate and conduct its actions and business, and how the State Board itself may be involved in such matters. And resolved that the State Board of Education intends for the ad hoc committee to present recommendations for revisions to the current policy reference manual to the State Board of Education at the November 4th, 2022 meeting, with the potential for adoption of any presented recommendations at the December 2nd, 2022 meeting. Signed on behalf of the Nebraska State Board of Education, the second day of September, 2022.
Lisa, did I see a second from you?
She needs to state a motion.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion on item 7.1.A? Deborah?
You mean discussion?
You read it, but there wasn't a motion made, so,
Okay.
and nor a second.
Sorry.
Can
Okay.
I ask a question?
All right, yes, you may.
About the motion before I make it?
There's not a,
She's supposed to let her make the motion, and then we
Then.
can proceed with discussion.
Okay,
But
please.
Can I change the motion if I want to from what I
you
have
can
written here?
introduce any motion you want.
I can say it. I move to adopt the resolution to revise State Board of Education Policy Reference Manual, the Education Policy Reference Manual, as is needed in order to support structural changes that are needed. All right, can I redo that? Can I re-say it? Okay. I move to adopt the resolution to revise the State Board of Education Policy Reference Manual to
Let's just pause and have her present it.
to,
Okay, all right.
to recommend structural changes that are needed.
Not really sure that that states what we were trying to do. Yeah, okay.
We can pause so we can
Okay,
write it, so we make sure we get the right motion written.
Yeah.
So Ryan, would you assist?
Would you just write it down so that we get it right here?
I don't either. I don't remember which meeting.
Okay, I move to adopt a resolution to revise the structural organization in the State Board of Education Policy Reference Manual.
I second, if you're.
Okay, what she reported on was that this was about structural changes. Okay, no, I know, sorry.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
There wasn't a second on the table to withdraw, was there?
She just presented a new.
Yeah, I don't.
Can we
So
read
I'm-
the motion and then make sure that's what you wanted to second, Jack?
Yeah, it needs a second. She just read a new motion.
Right, but prior to me speaking, Lisa had said she was withdrawing a second, and I didn't know that there was a second on the table to withdraw.
Okay, all right, thank you, Lisa. All
I
right.
second.
Okay,
The motion was made by Deborah Neary, seconded by Jacqueline Morrison.
is there any discussion on this motion?
I have some discussion, please.
Lisa?
Thank you. You're helpful, thank you. As I remember going into this ad hoc committee and you sharing with me President Kojon's, I asked about the ad hoc committee because I thought I might possibly be interested in it. And after I looked at our schedule for my committee, I said, I don't think I have time for that. So you said it was for changes. In my understanding, it was for structural and substantive changes. And that was from you. So if that is true, and the original intent of the president to do both, I think we need to honor that, because that was what was shared with committee member Goebbels.
Any more discussion?
I have some, well.
Deborah?
Well, as I listened to the discussion and listened to the report that Maureen presented, Maureen was specifically talking about the structural changes that needed to be made, and so that seemed to be more clarifying, about what the committee had seen as their focus. And since Patty's not here, we certainly would benefit from, her perspective on that, since she's been leading the committee. But anyway, that was what I heard from what was presented.
All right, Jacqueline.
I pulled up just now the presentation that Patty gave at our April 8th, 2022 board meeting. She gave a PowerPoint to this board. And the title of the PowerPoint is the Nebraska State Board of Education Proposed Board Policy Structure Revisions. That was the title of the PowerPoint. The next slides, the third slide says how current and proposed policy structures compare. Again, a reference to structure. If I go down, it says bylaw conversion. It talks about how these structures would be changed. Same with internal policy directive conversion. We're converting this to a new structure. And then at the last slide, it ends with policy structure work. The work that she was going to be doing to change the policy structure. Proposed next steps for the board were determine if policy structure work should continue. Policy structure work should continue. If so, identify development responsibilities and reporting structure. This is the PowerPoint presented. And so I'm not sure where the work of this committee was changed from what was presented to us by Patty. Because now I'm hearing, no, that's not what we talked about, but I'm looking at the PowerPoint that she presented, that's what she was going to do. And I remember talking to her when she was working on this before there was even an ad hoc committee, and this is what she said that she wanted to do. And so I think that there are some changes to this resolution that could be made that would tighten up what I think this ad hoc committee is supposed to be working on and doing. But the way that this particular resolution is written right now, I think could potentially go beyond what the purpose of this ad hoc committee was formed to do. I would be willing to work with Patty on this particular document. I'd be willing to table this to later today and make some suggested revisions. But at this time, I don't think that this is proper, considering ad hoc committees can only work on what the president told them to work on or created them for the purpose of. And I'm not certain this document narrows that or keeps it in line with what my understanding as a board member has been since this was presented to us. That's my first concern with this document. Second concern I have with this document is bullet point. It doesn't say A, B, or C, it's just the middle one. The board's policies that relate to and support the policy-making, rulemaking, and quasi-judicial responsibilities of the board. I understand that. It's the second sentence that gets me a little bit uneasy, and I'm not sure what purpose it's serving. They, I'm guessing they refers to, in this sentence, the board operational policies. So let's substitute in the board operational policies. The board operational policies specify how board members are to conduct themselves and interact with individuals and external entities. Conduct, to me, whether connotatively or denotatively, refers to how we're supposed to act, how we present ourselves. But if it's an operational policy, and we go back to the first point of that the first part of that sentence, it says, the board's policies as they relate to and support our policy-making, rulemaking, and quasi-judicial responsibilities. And so if that's related to policy and how we make policy, but then the second sentence is discussing our conduct, I don't see how those two sentences are working together to make an operational policy. Maybe they're two separate things, and maybe we should have a separate bullet point, or maybe we need to find a way to make this more broad or make this bullet point broader. I'm not sure what needs to be done, but I would like for someone on the committee to tell me or help me understand how the first part of that sentence and the second part of that sentence go together, because it seems to me the second part of that, or that second sentence, starts to limit the first part of that sentence, which I think is what we're doing. So what's the function of the second part of that sentence in the document? That's my second question for the committee. And then my third question, as I stated, it goes to the last part where it says the State Board of Education. If you look at the very first part of this document, it says structural changes in the second paragraph. So it says, whereas the ad hoc committee has met to review the reference manual, policies from other states, Robert's Rules of Orders, and recommends that structural changes be proposed. Got it, structural changes in the second paragraph. But then when you get to the last one, it says, be it resolved that the state intends for the ad hoc committee to present recommendations for revisions to the manual. And I think revisions to the manual means you guys could revise anything to this manual, and I'm concerned about that without knowing that this was what the ad hoc committee was to do. The third question that I have, and if one of the committee members can answer it, in our current policy manual, we have position statements where we discuss what our positions are going to be. I'm guessing that would get moved to somewhere else or absorbed. I'm not exactly sure what would happen to the position statements. On the proposed, in the PowerPoint, it says propose that we would have bylaws, board operating policies, agency management policies, and 4 position statements. There's a thing, because model policies are not board policies, they need to be displayed outside of the policy reference manual. So I'm guessing we are making a suggestion that the position statements be taken completely out of the policy reference manual and put somewhere else. But this particular resolution doesn't indicate where those would go. And I think if we're making that big of a change to our policy reference manual, this particular document should state where it would then go or why we're eliminating. And it doesn't address it, although it does in the PowerPoint, it doesn't in this resolution. And so those are my concerns. If the committee members have some thoughts, I'd really appreciate them.
First of all, I appreciate your questions and some relevancy there for sure. And I'm not trying to challenge the other board members or the other ad hoc board members. I guess I am thinking that there, and I know you mentioned something about tabling this, and I'm just wondering if it would be more, unless we're under some kind of time restraint here, that it would be better that we table this and wait for Patty to be involved in this discussion. But again, I look as much as anything to the other members of the ad hoc committee, because if you feel comfortable about going forward and answering these questions, that's great. If not, we might suggest that I guess the unofficial chair of the ad hoc committee be here to help clarify some of this. Just seeking thoughts as much as anything right here.
I'm just going to suggest something for if it helps our conversation anyway. I know the committee members are here. I know that Dr. Four has been staffing that, and I wonder if he might be able to add some clarity to the conversation so we don't continue to kind of spin wheels on that. So, Ryan, would you come forward and speak to the questions that have been asked? So.
I recognize that words are important and that that's important in getting clarity around passing this resolution and any of the resulting work. I also think it's important to note that no one committee of the board can take any action So any changes to anything has to be brought before the full board for action in public, regardless of whether it was granted in a committee or to an ad hoc committee or other committee. I also think it's important to note that while the president can grant authority to an ad hoc committee, the board can grant authority as well. I heard 3 points. The first one around the content of the resolution, which was presented in draft form at last month's meeting, and no feedback was received to this point. I'd be curious to know more, what about the language in the resolution implies that substantive changes would be made?
Dr. Four, are you asking a board member a question? Is that what you're asking for?
If that's the best way to learn that information.
Yeah, and I think, Jacqueline, I think my hope is to be able to answer your questions on that you did pose around that, so.
Sure. I think, and if you look at the last paragraph where it says resolved, I don't think I think that particular paragraph allows for the ad hoc committee to present recommendations for any revisions. I don't think it is limited to structural revisions. The way that it is written, it is an open-ended allowance to the committee to work on any revisions.
Okay. Another point that I heard was about position statements and where those fall. The current policy on committees indicates that any committee may present position statements. And so that's why position statements are not presented in these definitions.
So I think it's inappropriate for us to have a conversation like that. Where's my parliamentarian? No. So the currently there are position statements in the policy reference manual. That's where they live as part of our board documents. And so if we are revising or making revisions to our manual, and they will no longer, our position statements will no longer be in a manual, then we would need an indication of are we removing them from the manual? It doesn't say here position statements will be removed, position statements will exist in a different format, they will now have a new name. It's just this is something that is there that will no longer be there, but we are not, as we are also documenting this for future purposes, future boards, we're not giving any indication of what's happening with it or where we want to see it go. And so it's not necessarily about who has the ability to introduce said position statement. It's about us creating a document, removing something that was there, and not really indicating what's happening with the ones that previously existed.
Noted. What was your second point?
That was two. The third one is, as it specifically relates to the bullet point, board operational policies. Board operational policies here, in my opinion, has two separate definitions. The second sentence is limiting the first, the way that this is written. And so if we believe that board's policies, operational policies, are as we relate to supporting policymaking, rulemaking, et cetera, the second sentence then talks about how we are to conduct ourselves with individuals and external entities. It doesn't talk, that isn't relevant to how we develop policy. Our conduct isn't. And so I'm not sure who added that sentence and why what the purpose of that sentence is, or what it's explaining as it relates to our policy making.
The committee added that sentence, and I read it as not so much conduct and behavior, but conduct itself, how the board conducts itself. So, for example, there is a current policy on a state board member code of conduct, so that would fall in there. Engaging with the media would be another board operating policy in terms of how a board member or the board conducts itself, as well as other procedural items.
But are these operational policies, is the purpose of the operational policy to specify how the board is to conduct itself? Is that the one role of our board operational policies? Or are we saying they can, they may, this is something that could be included as a policy? Or are we saying that the policy is, the purpose of our board operational policies are to tell us how to conduct ourselves? Which is it doing?
I hear your point. To the question earlier about if there's a hurry for this, there's not. The intent in bringing forward a resolution was to give some reassurance for the ad hoc committee to move forward, particularly with the definitions. If it's thought by board members that some revisions could be made to the resolution, I recommend that a motion is made. If those edits could be brought forward today, I recommend then that a motion be made to table the motion on the floor. If it's thought that those edits can't be brought back today and need some more time, then I recommend that a motion is made to postpone definitely to the October meeting.
Jacqueline.
Would you like to see if anyone else needs to speak first before you call on me?
I would like to give the opportunity to some of the other board members too. Anybody else want to speak to this? Robin?
Just I guess a point of order. Tabling versus what was the term that you used?
Postpone definitely.
Definitely.
Definitely,
Postpone.
not indefinitely,
Right.
but definitely to the October meeting. Tabling, define that then for me. Anyway, anyone?
Table, that would be a specific motion to take it up later in today's agenda, essentially.
Oh, okay, all right.
Jacqueline? Lisa, did you raise your hand? Okay.
I have a procedural question. If there is a motion on the, if there's a motion on the floor, we've already seconded the motion, we have to vote, my understanding is we have to vote on that before we motion to postpone it.
No. Both of those are secondary motions, so you can apply the motion to lay on the table to the main motion, or you can apply the motion to postpone definitely to the main motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion to postpone this definitely to the October meeting to discuss some of the, for further consideration of the policy manual.
Second.
Resolution.
Excuse me. Were you done? I'm sorry.
The motion has been made and seconded.
Debatable, Ryan?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yeah. My concern on any of this is the fact that this was the PowerPoint that Patty presented last month was a PowerPoint that she put together prior to President Kojan's putting this ad hoc committee together. She shared a lot of that information prior at one time and did the PowerPoint. That was all done prior to President Kojan's putting this ad hoc committee together about what she was thinking of and looking at. The other thing, as a committee member, having spent invaluable amount of time working on this the last 2 months, which I'm more than happy to do, and I know that Mr. Penner is as well. We put in a lot of time, is that this resolution has been out there for a month, and not one word has been said to Chair Goebbels or to me, Mr. Penner. Was anything ever brought forth to you? Those are things that, President Kojan, was anything brought to you about this resolution?
No.
So those are things that bother me when they are brought up at the 11th hour or here at our board meeting. I think these are things that we study ahead of time, that I know a lot of you study ahead of time. And why is it brought up now when all of this work has gone forth to this? I'm not saying that this is perfect, okay? I'm not saying that at all. But it does bother me that this committee has done what we believe President Kojan has asked this committee to do, and now here today, after you've known for a month that this was put forth, you want to change things. And now, unfortunately, we don't have Chair Goebbels here today.
Deborah.
I know that we all appreciate the work that the committee's done. And I think just by the nature of our work and making sure that we're having conversations that are out in the open and transparent, and that we're nimble to new ideas that come forward, I guess I hope you know this isn't personal, that this is just part of the process for the work that we do. But since everything that we heard from when the committee was first set up to the report you gave today was about structure, which is very different than the content, I don't know why we as board members wouldn't want to tighten up the language and be very clear, because no matter what your intent was, it's really about what we approved and what was discussed at that meeting. And so if words matter, why wouldn't we want to clarify this and be precise about what the goals are?
Madam Chair. Lisa.
I appreciate what the vice chair of the committee just shared. When I look at the resolved at the very end, it's open to both structural and substantive changes. Could there be edits? As you said, it's not perfect. And as you said, it's been on there for a month. And I think there is a difference between the two, but the resolved lets you know the intent was for both. And I appreciate the work that you all put into this, and a whole 2 months of hard work and not hearing from anybody that there was a problem. There was a problem with something that had been on the Spark for at least 3 weeks, and I didn't wait till today to bring it up. I talked to a staff member who presented whatever it was I had a question about. So I make the phone call, I make the email to find out the answer to the question, and if I don't get what I think is what I want as an answer, then perhaps I would bring it up here. There are different styles of how people do things, and so I just want you to know, appreciate the work, and I believe the result lets you know that it's for both.
I don't know whose hand's up first. Okay. Jacqueline.
So just a couple of things. I want to go to our working agreement number 3. Be hard on ideas, soft on people. I think everything that I have presented here has been a concern with ideas, not a concern with people and the work that they've done. We are getting very close to the line of everybody being concerned with being hard on a person, but not considering and how we do things and what we could have done, what we should have done, what we might have done, instead of focusing on what's the idea and how can we get this right. I think I listened to you, Lisa, and you're saying exactly what my concern is, but in the opposite way. My concern is that I believe the ad hoc committee was formed to work on structure. I think that we were told it would be about structure. I think this document that we are being asked to vote on opens it up to substance and structure, which is not what, in my opinion, and based on the documents I brought up, what was presented to us. I've listened to Maureen. She said that they've worked on this for 2 months, and I don't think postponing this to get the language right stops the committee from being able to work. I don't think there's any indication that we wouldn't go along with the structure. I think my concern is with the language of the document. And so it always, I don't understand with the board. It's a difference. I think it's a difference of opinion. But we get concerned that people bring up things. We have a process that we work on stuff and then we bring it to the full board for discussion. That means at this setting, when we are here, this is our opportunity to discuss things as a full board. I don't understand why there is pushback on me for not calling and talking to a staff member ahead of time about something that comes to the board for the purpose of discussion. I don't understand why I get questioned, why didn't you discuss that at the last meeting? If there wasn't an opportunity to discuss it here, we wouldn't have put it on the agenda. We put it on the agenda for that purpose, yet that makes people uneasy and uncomfortable. I don't understand that. What I do know is we've been presented with a document, and I looked at it. I have concerns. I've pointed out the concerns. We can all take a vote on whether or not we want to move forward with the document and whether or not everyone's comfortable. I am one vote, and I recognize that I am one vote, but I will always, with the full board, tell the full board what I think about what we're voting on, because that's why we are here. And if we are uncomfortable with that, I don't know why we're having board meetings.
May I remind the board that there is a motion on the floor to postpone definitely the discussion on this until our next meeting, because the chair of this committee is not here, and the concerns are being presented, and you can see that there's some difference in opinion. So I'm reminding you, because we are now going in circles, and I agree with you, it's getting a little personal. So let's
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can we call the previous question?
Yes, you may. I require a second.
Second.
Okay, the question has been called. Andrea, will you please call the roll or read the?
So just to be clear, this is a motion to end debate.
And it requires a two-thirds vote. Okay, thank you.
Chair, can I have the motion read again?
Yes.
It's a motion to call the previous question, which is a motion to end debate.
Okay, it's a motion to call the previous question, which is to end the debate. Yeah.
Postpone definitely.
To postpone definitely. Okay, that's what we're.
The first vote is on ending debate.
End the debate, then postpone definitely. Okay, all right. Thank you, Andrea.
Goebbels, Neary,
Pass.
Kojons,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Fricky, Penner,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Morrison. Okay, I have
She passed, so you have to call on her again.
Neary,
Yes. Okay,
7 yes,
go ahead.
1 absent.
Okay. So the motion to end debate has passed. The second motion is to postpone indefinitely.
Postpone definitely.
Definitely. Dear God. Okay, definitely. All right? Andrea, please call the roll.
Stevens,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Morrison. Yes. Kojons,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels, Nichols,
No.
Fricky. No. 5 yes, 2 no, 1 absent.
The motion passes. Okay, for the record, the motion to vote on the proposal by the ad hoc committee has been postponed definitely to the October meeting. I have to check our time for sure. Okay. The State Board will now take a 45-minute break for lunch. Public comment is at 1. We will now move to our public comment period and take up the remainder of our agenda after public comment. Oh, I guess we're finished with our agenda. Agenda item 9.1, public comment. This period may be available to any person who wishes to address the State Board on any subject within its authority, including items appearing on the agenda, except for contested cases. Up to 2 hours will be allowed for the public comment period. A majority of members present and voting may take action to extend the total amount of time allowed for public comment period. A majority of members present and voting may also take action to allow or terminate public comment at any time during a meeting. Please note that public comment should be on topics related to the State Board's constitutional and statutory authority. Those wishing to speak must be signed in at the table outside of the meeting room. Persons speaking to the board during public comment should state their name at the beginning of their allotted time. Anyone refusing to be identified will be prohibited from speaking. Each person may address the board for up to 5 minutes. A majority of members present and voting may take action to reduce or extend the amount of individual time allotted to all speakers. If at any time persons appearing before the board exceed the time limitations set forth in this policy or on the agenda or become abusive or threatening in language or behavior, it shall be the responsibility of the president to declare that person out of order and to refuse permission to continue to address the board. We have how many speakers today?
11, Madam President.
We have 11 speakers signed up for public comment submitted. So we'll begin.
Once again, if I mispronounce your name, please excuse me. All may come forward as I call your name, and we will go in this order. Nancy Comer, Brooke Ritter, Jenna Durr, Arlene Ray, Wayne Smith, Jim Ray, Dee Tonak, Stephanie Johnson, Marnie Hodgkin, Liz Davids, and Jeannie Greiser. First up is Nancy Comer.
Okay, just checking. Okay, it works fine. My name is Nancy Comer, and since the pandemic and the onset of Zoom meetings, I've been part of a collaboration of Let's Talk Alliance, the NAACP, and Nebraskans for Peace. Kind of odd, but the group's common interest turned out to be education. And after many Zoom meetings, the group began to focus on 6 priority areas, including literacy instruction, equity, and inclusive curriculum. The bottom line was that all Nebraska students needed to receive an excellent education. Perhaps it was a pandemic and schools having to close and their doors reopening and finding teachers trying to manage instruction in the classroom with a computer on their lap for those at home, and it was challenging. The achievement gap, or as some people like to call it, the opportunity gap, widened, disproportionately affecting students of color and those on free and reduced lunch, confirmed in data recently by NAEP. During this time, the group asked volunteers to sit in on school board meetings, both at state and local levels. The intent was to listen and to take note of what was happening regarding the issues we were interested in. And then afterwards, a group member would ask to meet with the persons or people involved, asking for answers to specific questions related to the issues that I mentioned earlier. One takeaway that the collaboration had is the quality of leaders hired by the Nebraska Department of Education to research and follow up with the questions that we raised. Same was true of the public schools. When a Zoom meeting began, designated leaders, be they curriculum specialists, administrators, teachers, school board members, they showed up prepared to answer the specific questions and concerns with specific data and research. I should just quit and say thanks. But on a personal note, thinking back on my own education and in conversation with friends and neighbors, I find myself saying a lot lately, I didn't know that. When confronted with the history, for example, of the Tulsa Massacre, women I've never heard about were doing extraordinary things, and like Suzanne LaFlèche. When multicultural materials began appearing on bookshelves and in curriculum back in the 1980s, a school board member was heard to say that white men were being forgotten. I say, really? Today, some curriculum topics leave us feeling uncomfortable. It's easier not to talk about transgender or LGBTQA, probably left out one. If you don't know about a problem or something, you won't be unhappy or need to worry about it. But indeed, we do need to embrace new knowledge as we have in every generation. This is what keeps our children and our youth safe from those that abuse them, often family members, clergy, and trusted adults. So, whoops. I was almost done. While some might be quite concerned about the proposed health standards, critical race education, I want to say to the board, please make your tweaks in the curriculum, teacher standards, whatever that you have responsibility for, and continue to pursue quality education for all students as the ultimate goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Brooke Ritter.
Okay. Hi, my name is Brooke Ritter. I'm from Kearney, and I would like to talk to you today about porn. Recently, I received an email from my superintendent about a couple of so-called controversial books. Since words matter, I would like to correct this word and say that it's pornographic, not controversial. There's no controversy about porn and it not having a place in the school library. Full stop, no debate. So let's read some porn, guys. I guess this has been provided to us by Kearney High School, and the book is called Finding Alaska. All right, have you ever gotten a blowjob? Laura unbuttoned my pants and pulled down my boxers a little and pulled my penis out. Wow, she looked up at me, but she didn't move her face. It was nanometers away from my penis. Then she wrapped her hand around my penis and put it in her mouth. She didn't move a muscle. I thought maybe I should move her head up and down, but would that choke her? That's porn. Full stop, correct? We all understand that's porn? Yeah, all right, you should be nodding your heads. So, after I read this book from Kearney High School Library, I took it to my superintendent, Mundorf, and I was given literally no correct answers to my questions, and I had received no guidance from him on how to resolve the issue with this book. To say the least, he didn't do his job. And Deb, yeah, you congratulated him on not doing his job and what he had done. The porn, correct? You're congratulating him on the porn? Keep nodding, because you did. That's what you did. I'm a blunt person and there isn't much time, which I wish I would have known that I had more time because I could have given you more quotes on more books that are just astounding. Standing behind a pornographic book and calling it something as innocuous as controversial, well, that's a pattern with you, isn't it? Hide, lie, deny. Isn't that kind of a thing that you do? I hope your constituents are paying attention. It's an election year. And again, words matter, so let's be clear. It's not about banning books, it's about removing them from specific libraries, just the ones that it is illegal for them to be in. We don't call computer filter censorship. We call it protection. And again, words matter, so let's remember protecting children from books containing porn in the schools is not censorship, it's stewardship. This isn't complicated, and it is asinine to allow a child to read a book in person that they cannot read in their school online. There is no distinction between the two. This board says that it wants to protect children. Good, please remember, the mind and the body, or the mind and the soul are every bit as important as the body. Now, do your best to see to it that the parents and the stakeholders, and yes, I intentionally separated the two because parents and stakeholders are not the same, get what they want. That is your job. Do your job. And since I have more time, I would like to talk to you guys about how you run a committee, or a board rather. You guys are to approve the meeting minutes to begin with. Do you know that? Anybody? That's not a generic or a rhetorical question. Do you know? Do you know that you're supposed to approve the meeting minutes at the beginning of the meeting? Do you know why you're supposed to do it? Patsy, do you know? You've answered other people, why not me?
Ma'am, this is not a question and answer session, so.
But you've
may
done it
proceed with
before,
your
so the precedence
Proceed
is.
with your public comment, thank you.
Okay, so you guys are not doing this correctly, right? You aren't. And Ryan, you're next on my agenda. I cannot believe what you've allowed to happen. Why do you speak whenever you feel like it, but when you should and whenever everybody is invoking your name and saying, hey, we should probably ask Ryan what's going on, you don't say a thing. Why is it only certain times that you speak up? That's unacceptable. I don't understand it. And Member Morrison, keep bringing up your good comments, keep bringing up the good points. Deb, you even bring up some good points. You do. You actually, yeah. And Maureen, every time I see you, I know you know better. And it really is disappointing. When you ran this board, it was run differently. And I've watched the school board meetings. I don't understand why you're allowing this. And I know you know better. I just don't even have anything else to say. Have a good one.
Thank you. Brooke, Jenna Durr.
My name is Jenna Durr, and I'm from Kearney. Today I'm speaking on behalf of the Protect Nebraska Children Coalition, and we are here because of the actions of this board, the commissioner, and the NDE staff. Our mission is to protect the health and innocence of children and fundamental rights of parents to direct the education, healthcare, and upbringing of their children, and we have three main objectives: to advocate for laws and policies that will protect children and parents' fundamental rights, to expose the harmful nature of comprehensive sexuality education, gender ideology, and pornographic materials, and prevent any such materials, programs, or ideologies from being distributed, implemented, or promoted in schools, to inform and mobilize concerned citizens, including parents, grandparents, teachers, young people, policymakers, government officials, and business, religious, and community leaders to protect our children. Draft number 1 of the proposed health and sex education standards shocked Nebraskans, and it woke us up. We became united across our great state. We pushed back against radical, woke gender ideology. We said no to the transgender indoctrination of our children. We didn't support unscientific and medically inaccurate standards and subsequent curricula. We will never support gender mutilation of children. We will never support the early sexualization and grooming of children. We will never support any form of sexually explicit material in the schools. We will continue to support the good teachers in our state who want to teach their students, not have an agenda forced into their classrooms by bureaucrats and so-called experts who want students indoctrinated rather than educated. It's been 13 months since information obtained through a Freedom of Information Act was presented publicly to this board and to Commissioner Blumstead. All of you were provided clear information from your own records outlining how board member Neary directly conspired with the Women's Fund of Omaha and SECUS to write the proposed health and sex education standards. Remember SECUS? Sex Ed for Social Change is the proud slogan of SECUS and supports teaching children how to derive sexual pleasure. Furthermore, SECUS supports abortion on demand and pornography for students. It believes sexuality education should begin at birth and should be formally included in curriculum for every grade. Instead of addressing the manipulation and lies directly with transparency, honesty, and any remorse, the entire event has been ignored and remains unaddressed. Outside of Mr. Penner, you all failed to hold fellow board members accountable. You failed to hold Commissioner Blumstead accountable. You failed to hold NDE staff accountable. And this is why we keep showing up. This is why we keep speaking out. Why we have lost all trust in this board. Deb Neary and her so-called experts who hijacked the health and sex education standards promote and support the worst elements of academia and medicine and sex education. They normalize gender confusion in our schools. They promote grooming of our children. It doesn't matter what credentials they have or what degrees they hold. Pushing hormone therapy and gender mutilation, literally cutting off of healthy breasts and penises, is a crime against children. Anyone supporting such practices should not be a member of the Nebraska State School Board. And furthermore, we have discovered that some state school board members are bullies. And we have specific examples from board members Deb Neary and Robin Stevens. Your passive-aggressive behavior on social media is an embarrassment. Stop bullying parents and grandparents. You shouldn't be using your position as a state school board member to bully concerned constituents and their families. It's unprofessional. It's unethical. Be better, do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Arlene Ray.
Hi, I'm Arlene Ray. I am from Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'm a retired 40-year math instructor at the middle, high school, and college levels. I taught at Hastings and Lincoln Public Schools and at the Central Community College in Grand Island and at Kaplan and Strayer Universities here in Lincoln. I'm here to talk about Nebraska's public schools. In 2001, Educator Deborah Meyer, in her book, The Power of Their Ideas, influenced Melinda Gates of the Gates Foundation to understand why public schools are not only an important equalizer, but the engine of a thriving democracy. A democracy requires equal participation from everyone. That means when our public schools fail to prepare students to fully participate in public life, they fail our country too. We must preserve Nebraska's legacy of quality public education. Our public schools have consistently ranked as one of the highest in the nation. Our local school boards across the state work to maintain and improve quality public education by listening and working with parents, educators, and their communities. When public schools thrive, the community thrives. Standards such as the updated math standards are developed and written by subject teachers at all levels from across the state with community input. With the assistance of the Nebraska Department of Education staff, these standards provide districts the guidance to maintain rigor and consistency in our mobile society. By providing the different standards, the state board encourages equity and access of resources to all students. The daily work and dedication teachers provide to educate all students need to be commended rather than hampered by outside voices with misinformation of CRT, SEL, and grooming, along with the censorship of books and newspapers. The last 3 years with the COVID epidemic, along with the false rhetoric, is taking a toll on the teaching profession. Just look at your report this morning and also how many school districts are without professionals this year. Educators need to be built up each day for what they do for the youth of our towns and cities, rural and urban. Teachers strive to know their students. They want the tools to help all students, not just a select few. The standards are one of those tools. Nebraska is one of 5 states to resist charter schools for good reasons. Through research and data collection, it has been shown that not all charters accommodate all students, including race, gender, special needs, etc. There are questionable admission levels where certain students are chosen over others. And in regard to vouchers, it has been found that there aren't enough resources to fund vouchers without taking needed resources from public schools so they can maintain services to serve all student needs. Can Nebraska do better? Well, of course. Look at the alternative school programs that we've been hearing about in the last several board meetings and all across the different programs across our state. Even Bill Gates and Melinda Gates of the Gates Foundation, who have been involved with and supported many education projects for over 20 years, have conceded in their 2020 foundation letter that their investment of millions of dollars in countless projects has not produced a single educational reform solution which will work in every school. The exception may be where schools are working in collaboration with neighboring or similar schools. Let us not be short-sighted. Just because one doesn't agree with something doesn't mean we do away with the whole educational program. Yes, be vocal, yet truthful. Our local school boards and its community members make the ultimate decisions for what happens in their own communities. Let us work together to improve what is now great education in Nebraska. Let us help make it better and at the same time preserve our way of life and democracy.
Thank you, Arlene. Wayne Smith.
My name is Wayne Smith. Any health standards that you would develop probably would include affirming transgenders, which is anything but healthy. Please scrap the health standards. Go to Scott Nugent's website, trevoices.org, to learn about all the pitfalls and complications of transitioning from female to male. That's trevoices.org. Pushing transitioning is a cultural Marxism aimed to dehumanize, demoralize, and tear families apart. I want to read some excerpts from an article entitled Ex-Transgender Teen Recounts Horrifying Experience of Transition Surgery by Brad Jones. This is a story of Chloe Cole, who was 15 years old when she agreed to let a gender-affirming surgeon remove her healthy breasts, a life-altering decision she now deeply regrets. Cole, who is now 18, feels more like she's just awoken from a nightmare, and she's disappointed with the medical and school system that fast-tracked her to gender transition surgery. I was convinced that it would make me happy, that it would make me whole as a person, she said. She doesn't blame her parents for following the advice of school staff and medical professionals who affirmed her desire for social transitioning, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgery. They effectively guilted my parents into allowing them to do this. There is just so much complacency on the part of educators. Pretty much every transgender person I've ever met either has really bad family issues, or they've been sexually abused or assaulted at a very young age. And it's really concerning that nobody really talks about that association. Cole went to a gender specialist who referred her to an endocrinologist. The endocrinologist refused to prescribe blockers or hormones, citing concerns about how they could affect Cole's cognitive development. They put me on blockers first, she said. I would get hot flashes. They were pretty bad. Before her operation, Cole attended a top surgery class with 15 other children. It kind of felt like propaganda, the words they use, like gender-affirming care and things of that sort, she said. It does feel like I was sold a product. The surgery left Cole with deep muscle soreness, for which she was prescribed an opioid-based medication. But because the pain from the resulting digestion problems was worse than the pain in her chest, she stopped taking the pills. I was actually disabled for a while. I had a really limited range of motion, especially in my arms and upper body. It's been 2 years, and I'm still having some really bad skin issues, she said. The way the skin heals over the grafts, is just awful. It's really quite disgusting. She also worries the puberty blockers might have affected her brain development, as her first endocrinologist had warned. But her greatest regret is how the surgery has permanently affected her as a woman. Over time, she grew increasingly more disillusioned with the idea of living as a man. She was depressed and fell into an emotional tailspin. During the second semester of her junior year, Cole's grades plummeted, and her parents decided to put her into an online-only school program. My school performance actually got worse because now I was truly isolated. Cole announced her detransition about 11 months after the surgery and has embraced womanhood. I am a woman, she said. She is straight, she said, and knows now that her gender confusion as a child was based on insecurity and her fear of being a woman. There are multiple options for reconstruction, but I honestly don't think it's worth it, she said. I will never get the function back no matter what I do, so there's not really a point in doing it. She wonders why educators have become complicit in the gender-affirming process.
Thank you, Wayne.
Okay, thank you.
Jim Ray.
Good afternoon, excuse me. Good afternoon, members of the State Board of Education. My name is Jim Ray of Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm here today to tell you how proud I am of Nebraska's public schools and how proud I am that my two sons are successful members of their respective communities. My sons started school in Grand Island, and they finished their education at Lincoln Public Schools, first at Hill Elementary, Irving Junior High, and Southeast High School. The educators that my sons encountered fostered in them a sense of community and caring. They met their individual learning styles. They challenged them to think on their own and to make their own decisions. And they guided them on how to be contributing members of society. Our oldest son is an anesthesiologist now in Colorado. Our youngest son is an operations manager for a global company in New York. They are there because of the education they received in Lincoln and in Grand Island. Both of our sons acknowledge their success can be associated directly with all of the teachers they encountered in their schooling. Their educators were dedicated to them. They worked tirelessly with them. They challenged them and supported them all they could. Nebraskans take pride in their schools. Now is the time to continue that long-standing support for our schools. Pride is a common goal, and this parent is a proud advocate for Nebraska's public schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Dee Tonak.
Good afternoon, Dr. Dee Tonak, a retired educator, but certainly not retired from being involved in education, and commending you for what you do. And let's just keep on talking about what we need to do. So many things have been talked about here today, but what we're all about is public education. So what is that? So I dug out some of my old college material, and Horace Mann, of course, is given a lot of credit for starting public education here in the United States. And in 1838, he created what he called were his 6 main principles for public education. Number 1, sounds pretty good, the public should no longer remain ignorant. Pretty good goal. Number 2, that such education should be paid for, controlled, and sustained by an interested public. And we all of us here are interested in good education. Number 3, that this education will be best provided in schools that embrace children from a variety of backgrounds. Our first speaker, Nancy Comer, addressed that. Diversity, variety of backgrounds are good words and phrases, not something to avoid. Number 4, perhaps a message to all of us, myself included, that this education must be non-sectarian, not related to a specific religious sect or political group. Hard to remember that. Number 5, that this education must be taught using the tenets of a free society, and that education should be provided by well-trained professional teachers. And I think Horace Mann would applaud the many good examples given this morning by several groups who are making sure we have a good public education. Another comment from Horseman was, building a person's characters is as important as reading, writing, and arithmetic. I will add now a D. Tonak principle. I don't think it's down in any book. But we've been looking at what to do about this praxis testing, trying to get something better. And so another aside, I've talked to some of you before, maybe on another agenda, how can we reduce all the testing we're doing of students? I hear a lot of teachers say, test. My daughter-in-law has 5-year-olds, many from another country, who are just pushing buttons because they're supposed to take a test. That's another aside. So thank you from Horace Mann. I'm sure he'd thank you for all you're doing. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Dee. Stephanie Johnson.
Okay, my foot was asleep, so I made it up here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and for keeping it to the 1 o'clock agenda time. So I wasn't sure how to approach this topic, but it's very, very concerning to me, and it just broke my heart to see what you had put on Twitter, Deb Neary. I am the executive director for Nebraskans for Founders Values, and I'm a very good friend of the president, founder. He's the founder, and I won't mention his name, but I'm sure you guys have seen him testify here many, many times. And because of everything that's happened in our climate and the division that's been caused, families become divided, which is a very hard thing. And if you've ever had to go through that, I just, would hope that healing would come. Every person wants that for people, that when their family is divided, that they would come back together, people that have been separated from their children because of opposing viewpoints. You just pray that God would heal that, especially when they have grandchildren who are involved, and you don't want this to create division. When I saw what you put on social media regarding what's happened with him and his family and the division, I was almost at a loss for words, exploiting that, making that public, mocking it, seeking comments for what people would say, the hurt that causes people, other people who are experiencing that in their own families, and that you would put that out, Deb, for people to see, to make light of that. You attended my Bible study with the women in our group. Hopefully you would know the hearts of us, that it's all we want. We love our families. We love our children more than anything. We, of course, love our state. We love our schools. When we have any friends that are going through something like this, we pray for them. But for you to put out there what's going on in his family and to highlight that, and almost, I think, use that opportunity for your own gain. I don't want to make any insinuations about your character, because I'm not a good friend of yours. But I would pray to God that any friend that I would ever have would never do that to me. I would never do that to someone. And for what you did, and that character, just it says a lot about the character of a person who would do that. And I don't think people really truly out there in the state understand what is going on here. That someone who would claim to want to bring families together and create healing and have those opportunities would do that to someone. The people of Nebraska have no idea the depths to what's going on and how important the election is, that you are no longer in this position to do that to people. That we can replace you with somebody who would never, ever, ever do that to someone. You need to think about what you've done. It's one of the things God hates. I don't know if you know that. God hates 7 things. And because you were at my Bible study, I will read it to you. He hates people who have prideful eyes and that are arrogant. He hates people who lie, people that kill innocent. He hates hearts that plot evil. He hates feet that race to do the wrong thing. He hates people who will bear a false witness and lie. And he hates a person who sows discords in families. So, honestly, I feel sorry for you. I feel like you need to repent, seek the Lord on this. And if any of you know about it, I hope that you will find out what it is about. And know that we come here to create, we want healing, and we love the children and we love our families in the state of Nebraska and would never, ever seek to do anything like that to anybody.
Thank you, Stephanie. Marnie Hodgkin.
Hi, my name is Marnie Hodgin. I'm a candidate for State Board of Education District 8. And I'm going to drop as many truth bombs as I can regarding the last year and the things that have been brought to my attention since running for candidacy. Truth. The Nebraska State Board of Education claimed no activists were involved in the writing of the health standards. This was a proven lie when Public Records Request revealed current board member Neary adamantly vying for Lisa Schultz with the Women's Fund of Omaha to be involved. In other emails, Neary reminded fellow board members of the time they brought in activist groups GLSEN and the Women's Fund of Omaha. Truth. The health standards that Nebraska proposed are nearly identical to the national sexuality education standards, which were written by activist groups like Advocates for Youth, Answer, and SECUS. SECUS was formed with seed money by Hugh Hefner and created by a former Planned Parenthood director and a former assistant to Alfred Kinsey. Truth. Alfred Kinsey believed all children are sexual from birth, have sexual rights, and to deny children of these sexual rights is a form of oppression. Kinsey could use convicted pedophiles to carry out abuse and rape on children in the name of research in the horrific Table 34. His beliefs of children being sexual from birth are the foundation for comprehensive sexuality education. Truth. Omaha Public Schools have adopted portions of comprehensive sexuality education for the past 6 years. Stats provided by Douglas County Health Department, Douglas County has the highest rates of STIs. And interestingly, the age bracket with the second highest STI rate in Douglas County is youths ages 15 to 19. Truth. Analysis of public comment conducted by UNL states 90% of the public do not want comprehensive sexuality education in the schools. Truth. Board member Neary attempted to skirt around using public comment as a barometer by reaching out to the Board of Regents at UNL. She told fellow board members she spoke with 2 regents when in fact she spoke with only 1. She continues to place emphasis on science and facts when advocating for these standards, yet ignoring the most basic facts of reproductive science. XX chromosomes equals female, XY chromosomes equals male. And no amount of hormone therapies will ever be able to penetrate into your sex hormones, chromosomes, and change that. That is a fact. That is science. Truth. 80 to 90% of gender confusion in children spontaneously disappear. Truth. Planned Parenthood is the second largest provider of hormone blockers and supports Nebraska's comprehensive sexuality education. Truth. The health standards when the board had the opportunity to put the health standards to bed this past February, 7 of you voted to not permanently reject them, and that is why I'm running. Truth. In September 2019, the NDE changed the wording from their position statement from equality to equity. Equity has become the state board's priority, not academic excellence, not test scores, not education, but equity. Truth. In 2019, our statewide proficiency scores fell below 50%. Truth. The commissioner makes over $232,000 a year and thinks he deserves a raise. Truth. As long as the commissioner and the board president are in agreement, the board can spend up to $50,000 at a time, unlimited. They've already spent $500,000 of our tax-paying money on a consulting firm to help them hash out their feelings. And last month, the board voted to spend another $50,000 with the woke organization American Institute for Research to come up with a method to process the standards because they can't do it themselves. Truth. A school in western Nebraska had not been audited in over 20 years. Last spring, it finally did begin the auditing process, but how did it slip through the cracks? What has the NDE not been doing or not doing? Are there other schools that have been also slipping through the cracks, going unaudited? And why didn't the current board member, Robin Stevens for District 7, keep a better eye on what the Nebraska Department of Education should be doing? Truth, the Nebraska Department of Education has 500 employees. They are still working from home. Truth, I had a father tell me his second grader at a District 66 school isn't learning anything about American exceptionalism, and so that school would be in a direct violation of Nebraska Revised Statute 79-724, Section 3. Truth, an OPS teacher shared a story of a 5th grade student who couldn't read. When the teacher went to the administration to ask for extra resources for this student, the administration shrugged it off and said, "Oh, so-and-so, just pass him." I have a lot more, but I'm going to leave you with the last truth. There's a better way, and there's a better option for our State Board of Education. You all have a choice on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Marnie. Liz Davids.
I'm a little bit taller than Marnie. Good afternoon, board members. I thank you for clarifying the specific time frame for public comment during this Friday business meeting, and I hope this trend continues. Maybe you can encourage clarity in some other areas. For instance, on Monday of this week, David Jesperson, the NDE spokesman, was interviewed by the Omaha World Herald on the growing number of micro schools in the Omaha area. And unfortunately, several of the things Mr. Jesperson said were unclear and even derogatory against certain educational methodologies. It is my understanding that the NDE is responsible for ensuring successful academic education for all Nebraska students, regardless of the methodology, and so I would think NDE employees would gladly provide clarity about this new and successful phenomenon of microschools. But Mr. Jesperson was quoted in the article saying, "A microschool isn't really a school. It's just people helping a student learn different subjects." I would like to ask Mr. Jefferson, what do you think teaching is besides helping a student learn? And what do you think a school is except a place where students learn from teachers? He continues, there's no requirement for them to be registered with the state because they don't have any students necessarily. They are basically working as a contractor for a group of exempt families. Again, how condescending to say that these microschools have no students or teachers because they aren't registered with the state government educational entities. I would encourage Mr. Jesperson that the words he was looking for are instructional monitor, because those are the words listed on your NDE website for the people who teach exempt students that may or may not be their own children. Continuing the unhelpful lack of clarity regarding Nebraska's educational options on the same day that this article was published that cited the success many are having with the growing number of microschool options, board member Deb Neary tweeted that she has received calls from parents who found out at college application time that their child's college choices would not accept credits from the Nebraska schools that were not approved or accredited. Firstly, Ms. Neary, this is an inappropriately broad and vague statement that has the effect of discouraging parents from looking at microschools as valid options for their students. If you would claim that you didn't realize your vague statement would have that effect, then I would have to ask why you didn't post the number of calls that you received. Because in a follow-up email this week, you clarified that during your 4 years of tenure, you have received exactly 2 phone calls from Nebraska parents whose children's high school credits were not accepted at their desired college of choice. And I would like to ask Ryan Four, who was referenced by Ms. Neary as the one with access to NDE research, how many schools are there in Nebraska that are neither approved nor accredited, but also not exempt? In the article, Mr. Jesperson claims to know that as of August 19th, there were 35 multifamily units registered for this school year in Nebraska. So if you all somehow know how many micro schools are in Nebraska, shouldn't you also know exactly how many students there are that fall into neither the exempt nor approved nor accredited category? When Deb Neary got the count them two, phone calls from distraught parents that she mentions in her tweet this week, did Ms. Neary make a suggestion that the NDE proactively make parents of students that attend these small number of schools in Nebraska aware of this situation? Aren't you responsible for every Nebraska student's success, not just the public school students? But at least Mr. Jesperson was accurate when he said the state doesn't provide oversight of curriculum for those exempt from state standards, and that micro schools are not allowed to issue high school diplomas. But how disparaging to say, if they do give a student a certificate of completion, it basically means nothing in the eyes of the world and state. With our state public schools maintaining an academic proficiency rate of 50% and yet a graduation rate around 80%, I would like Mr. Jesperson to tell me what exactly the world and state should think of the Nebraska government school diplomas they issue. Here are the straight facts that every Nebraska parent needs to know. You can pull your child from the government public school at any time, for any reason, and put them in a different educational institution. If you're concerned about the Biden administration right now requiring that your local public schools allow boys into girls' locker rooms and bathrooms, that they're no longer tracking and penalizing public school teachers who have predatory relationships with their students, and that extreme political ideologies are making their way into every subject of curricula, you can pull your children from government schools at any time. And if you enroll in the exempt school program, you are exempt from the state's educational standards. You can teach your children or have someone else teach your children. You can tailor your child's education to their needs and desires. You can impart character, qualities, and values that you hold dear and see your children raised in the ways that you think are best. When they complete their course of study from a tailor-made educational experience, which is, yes, unaccredited and proudly so, your child will be passionately pursued by colleges and universities. Nebraska parents, you should choose wisely.
Thanks, Liz. Jeannie Greiser.
Good afternoon, it's Jeannie Greisen. I'm here today with two messages. The first message is for the board, and that message is a reading of Luke 17:2. This is regarding your nonstop, adamant view on comprehensive sex ed. Luke 17:2 says, "It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he would be cast into the sea than he should cause one of these little ones to sin." So when we talk about causing them to sin, we're talking physical, emotional, psychological. So I want you all to think about that. Then my next message is actually for parents, grandparents, caregivers, anyone that watches these meetings online. My message is really a message of hope and courage for them. So when they watch this, if they're not watching it live, there's an article written by Dr. Larry Arnn discussing how the education system has turned into a control system. Today, a child is seen as a product, since the product has a potential to reshape the world. Exerting immense control over the child's education is a way to control the future, which is what we're seeing with your nonstop health standards. The public education bureaucracy controls the future by regulating everything that happens in schools. It begins with requiring that teachers have specific certifications, which seems appropriate on the surface, but the certification is mostly concerned with how to teach instead of the subject mastery required to teach well. Yet by far, the worst embodiment of the power and control wielded by the education bureaucrats is their ability to tell children where to go to school. More than half of the US adults are not proficient in literacy, reading below a 6th grade level, and costing the economy as much as $2.2 trillion a year as a result. To put this on a global context, according to a recent comprehensive worldwide study of the educational aptitude of 15-year-olds, the United States ranks 13th in reading, 18th in science, and 37th in math. Trust in public education sits near an all-time low. Only 28% have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in US public schools, down a staggering 44% since the high water mark recorded by Gallup in 1975. Members of the education cartel have had decades to address these failings, but have not solved the countless problems engulfing public education. Worse, any attempts from outsiders to address and ameliorate these shortcomings are routinely stymied. Making way for new schools would threaten the cartel's control. As a result, more than 1 million students languish on charter school wait lists. What's more staggering, the National Alliance for Public Charter School estimates another 4 million students want to attend a charter school but lack the option in the area. This would be the case in Nebraska, who will not allow charter schools. I ask the question, why? Would we actually have better results in educating our children if Nebraska would allow charter schools? And this is a subject that needs to get brought up into the state legislature this year, because charter schools need to be allowed in the state of Nebraska. Yet in turn, out of that, parents don't treat their children as mere tools to control the future. They think of them as a blessing, an obligation, and a joy. This places them in precisely the frame of mind to make them excellent at their job, which is to help children grow. Parents cannot do the growing for their children. Even from a young age, children will grow by themselves, but they will grow much better if they have help. In short, students don't need an engineer, they need a gardener. Thus, parents are the best educators of their children, and based on the failing statistics of Nebraska public schools, the probability of your child getting a better education from you, the parent, is much higher than at a public institution. I encourage parents to be brave and bold and pull your kids out of these failing systems. Your kids will thank you for it. That is my message to the parents and those watching this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Madam President, that concludes our presentations.
Submitted written public comments are attached in the electronic meeting agenda for the board and the public to read. Agenda item 10.1 through 0.5. The next items are information items only and written reports for the board and for our information only. This section of the agenda is intended for board members to offer informal observations of the work of the state board. Board members may make brief announcements about attendance at future events for the purpose of informing other board members. No business or motions or suggested actions of the board may be offered at this point in the agenda, nor should the board members engage in substantive discussion about other agenda items, introduce new agenda items. Is there anyone who wants to make a final comment? Agenda item 1.2. Thank you for those who attended in person and who tuned into the broadcast. The next meeting of the State Board of Education is scheduled for October 6th and 7th, 2022 in Omaha, Nebraska. The September 2nd, 2022 State Board meeting is now adjourned.